I'd like to call the meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mary Beth?
Councilwoman Chapman.
Here.
Councilman Cookingham. Here. Councilman Deegan.
Here.
Councilman Reifenberg.
Here.
Supervisor Albrecht.
Here.
Town Attorney Emily Swenson.
Here.
All present.
Thank you. I'd like a motion to accept the agenda as is.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Okay. Tonight we have a couple of public hearings. I'd like to read something first. Public hearing, oh, I thought you needed me. Public hearing, I am in receipt of the affidavit of posting pertaining to a local law amending the town code of the town of Pleasant Valley by enacting a new chapter 72 entitled Residential Rentals, which implements good cause eviction in Pleasant Valley, by the town clerk, Mary Beth Muir, on April 21st, 25, and the affidavit of publication by the Northern Dutchess News dated April 23rd, 25, April 30th, 25, May 7th of 25, and May 14th of 25. Okay, I'd like a motion to open the public hearing for local law H of the year 2025 entitled Local Law Amending the Town Code of the Town of Pleasant Valley by enacting a new chapter 72 entitled Residential Rentals, which implements good cause eviction in Pleasant Valley.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
If anybody would like to get up and speak about this law, I'd like you to state your full name and address, and please speak into the microphone because it's very hard for people at home to hear you if you do not. And if you could stand in line a bit while people are talking, I'd appreciate it so we can keep the ball rolling a little bit.
Good evening. I can't believe I'm the first to rise to speak to this. Gully Stanford, 181 Marshall Road. I can only say how pleased I was to see this proposal on the agenda to opt into the state law regarding good cause eviction in Pleasant Valley. You are joining some of the great towns and cities. If you pass this, you will be joining some of the great towns and cities of our state: Albany, Rochester, Poughkeepsie. I was delighted to see Fishkill here also. This is not an easy time for either landlords or renters. These are difficult times to pursue life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. Uncertainty is a barrier to the pursuit of happiness. So if you remove some of the uncertainty facing those who rent in our community, you are assuring them of, I believe, the respect of this town, the welcome of this town, putting Pleasant back into Pleasant Valley. If you look at the hierarchy of needs, housing, food, clothing, and yet there are people in our society, wealthy as it is, who want for food, for clothing, and for housing. And I believe, since you have put guardrails in here to protect the landlords, and we respect, obviously, those who make their livings through the fair, the equitable rental of property, I do hope you will adopt this resolution. Thank you.
Gary Veters, Salt Point Turnpike, Pleasant Valley. I would like to, what copy of what town is this proposed law? Where did it come from? Because it obviously didn't start with Pleasant Valley, because we're talking about maybe located in a coastal erosion hazardous area. I haven't seen any tide in the Wappingers, so this had to be evolved from some other town.
Gary, we're doing good cause eviction, not anything else right now. I don't know if you're referring to that. It doesn't sound like you are.
I just read it.
The good cause eviction?
Pardon me?
The good cause eviction law?
I think he's talking about the seeker.
Are you
It's part of the-
referring,
Oh, that you're
maybe
you're doing the seeker part of it.
it may be the environmental review form that you're referring to? That's a statewide form that we have to go through to check if there are any environmental impacts. So that's a statewide form.
I think the attorney should probably explain what this seeker law is all about.
So, the State Environmental Quality Review Act says that every time the town takes an action or funds an action or approves an action, and local laws are among those type of actions, that it needs to do an environmental review to determine if there's any significant adverse environmental impact. So as part of each of the 3 laws that are on the agenda tonight, the town board needs to go through the list of potential impacts and determine if there are any before it can adopt the law.
Okay. This one had a short environmental assessment form filled out. Okay. How can you tell by what's in this thing allowing these residences and cottages or whatever they are? Will the action impair the character and quality of the existing community? You don't know that unless you get something in front of you. The same thing with, will it impair the quality of historic and archaeological architecture and aesthetic resources? If they want to put an addition on a historic home,
I think you're looking at the ADU.
pardon me?
I think you might be looking at the ADU or just the form, but this is, good cause eviction is strictly to existing apartment buildings. I think you might be, they're the same form for all 3 of the issues, so maybe that's why it's confusing.
Anyone else to speak about the good cause evictions?
Hi there, Megan Borland, 26 Oxford Road. I appreciate the town board considering this law. I'm speaking today because I've been on both sides of this equation. For many years I was a tenant, and I had some bad landlords where I lost security deposits for no reason, or lived in pest-infested apartments that didn't get fixed, which was a difficult experience to have as a youth. And now I'm actually on the other side of the coin, that I am a landlord and I would be affected by this law because I own a property with another family that has 2 units, so it would be affected under the, even though we are a small landlord and owner. I looked through some of the concerns that landlords have about this law, and then they've noted some reasonable concerns, right? That rents could rise because if this law increased the length or cost of an eviction process, that landlords may screen tenants more heavily because they are concerned about eviction, and that they might be discouraged. It might discourage some small people like me, small landlords, to be able to be homeowners, renters, so that they wouldn't invest in the property because it becomes too difficult. I have been through 2 eviction processes in our experience as landlords. One of them we were able to navigate with the tenant. The other one led to eviction, and it was very costly and made it discouraging for a family to be an owner. But knowing all of that, I do think that this law has reasonable protections in it for landlords, right? It has that 2 to 8% raise in rent. So if the eviction process did cost me more money, yes, I might build in a little bit of that so that I could save up in case I needed to do an eviction. And I did read that the state is willing to take a look at this law again if it does indeed cause that. Having been a tenant, I think it is important that we do protect the tenants because they are, vulnerable to this, and it is a good cause eviction law. So it doesn't mean that landlords can't evict. It means that they just have to have evidence to convict or to evict somebody. So all in all, looking at it in the balance, I think that it would be fair with all of the provisions in this law to pass this law for Pleasant Valley. And keeping an open mind that if in the future we did see that our landlords were having struggles with tenants and that the court system was getting clogged up and that we were getting overexpended as landlords, that the town would again look at the law and make sure that the landlords were reasonably protected. So all in all, I would support the law, but keep an eye on it in the future like the state has said that they would do. Thank you.
Hi there. I'm Ben Surface. I'm the supervising attorney with the Hudson Valley Justice Center. I represent tenants in the Hudson Valley, and specifically I've represented tenants in Pleasant Valley who've been facing eviction. I've been here at the past few meetings talking about this law, and I actually think the person who spoke right before me really summed it up. I think what this law does is provides meaningful protections to tenants while providing flexibility to landlords who need it. The rent guidelines here are not caps. They're not rent control, and landlords are still within their rights to pursue eviction if there is good cause. The one specific point I want to highlight tonight is the importance of closing what we've been calling the LLC loophole, which is specifically setting the small landlord definition at 1 unit. Now, in the sort of common use of small landlord, we understand that people like the woman who just spoke are small landlords, but when it comes to the actual operation of this law, it's very important that we set this definition at 1 because it is a common practice in rental real estate, and it is not a cynical one, to own your properties in separate LLCs. It's something we see right now in places that do not have good cause. It's very common. The issue this creates is that in the state of New York, there is no publicly available way to search the ownership interests in distinct LLCs for a tenant to know whether their landlord in the LLC that owns their property has people involved in that LLC who own other properties. And so if we don't close this loophole and set the small landlord definition to 1, we are leaving tenants vulnerable to the possibility that landlords who seek to use this mechanism cynically can hide the fact that they actually own more units than they're saying, which means that this law will not have the force and effect that it could have for tenants who would otherwise qualify. This is an additional vulnerability when we get to eviction proceedings because in summary eviction proceedings, there is no right to discovery. So a tenant does not have the right to come to court and say, Your Honor, I understand I'm being evicted. They're saying that I'm not covered by good cause. I'd like discovery so I can see their books to find out if that's true. There's no right to that. In order to get that in a summary proceeding, I have to already show up knowing that they're lying with proof that they're lying in order to get the judge to find sufficient evidence to give me the right to seek that discovery. So the law tries to accommodate this, but unfortunately it is a self-enforcing mechanism, and so the importance of setting the small landlord definition at 1 is so that we don't leave tenants who should be covered by the law vulnerable to a bit of a shell game with LLCs. So that's all I wanted to hammer on tonight. I really hope that the town passes the law, and I think the landlord who spoke before me really summed up why this law is a good balance between tenant protections and flexibility for landlords. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Hi everyone, I'm Chris Dyson, 167 Gretna Road. I'm a lifelong Pleasant Valley resident and managing partner of Pleasant Valley Properties. We have Brookside Meadows in our portfolio, and I'm grateful for the chance to speak here tonight. And it doesn't seem like too long ago that I was standing before this board, but it was about 25 years ago, coming up around the times we first started to talk about the project. And during that time, I think it's important to note why we're all here. We're really all here because we have a housing problem in the state of New York that was born of 50 years of no's. 50 years of not in my backyard, not developing, not the creation of rental properties, and we're paying the price for it right now. And I would encourage everybody to recognize that the source of solutions lies in supply and the creation of more choice for those who can't afford to buy units. Not necessarily in penalizing the creation and disincentivizing the improvement of rental units. I think that tenant protection is important, but I think that this statute is flawed in ways that people haven't fully understood. Eviction is a very painful process, and it's a process that thankfully in our community we've not had to go through often. But having said that, when you look at this law, there are some trapdoors in it, and some of the trapdoors relate to lease extension and the ability for landlords to effectively deal with eviction. And while we'd all like to say that there aren't going to be problem tenants, I think that's naive. And no matter how well you screen, you are going to have difficulties. Now, that doesn't just affect landlords. That affects the people who live on the properties. That affects their neighbors. It affects our community. And I think that's an important thing for us to bear in mind here, is that the eviction process is painful. It's painful for all involved, and it's particularly painful when you get a tenant and a resident that is unreasonable and is creating problems for the neighborhood. And I fear that the unintended consequence of this law, if you read it, there's a provision that says that if you don't have a lease, you don't have to leave. And that's a very, very important part of this, that's a relatively sneaky part of this legislation. And I think that that's going to create more problems than we think, and I worry about that for everyone. The other thing is that I think that we have to grow as a town. We have to develop. We've got to meet the contemporary needs. And Albany is not coming to the rescue, okay? Like, Albany has not come to the rescue. This is a home rule state. So what that means is that the solutions for growth and the creation of abundance happens here. It happens with our town working with the county. And I think that there's a different model than relying on legislation that's been filtered down through arm wrestling in Albany that really doesn't relate to our community. So I would encourage the town board to work collaboratively with not only residents and townsfolk, but also the property owners who are trying to create new supply here. Let's try to give our tenants more choice. I think that this legislation will be a real big mistake, and I think one of the mistakes is that by capping the rent increases and triggering and kind of artificially constraining the ability to grow the rent rolls, there's a problem with that. Part of the problem is that you're incentivized to make big improvements, but you're not necessarily incentivized to make small ones. And I think it's in that balance where landlords, knowing that they won't have the ability to raise rents past a certain point, may not make those improvements. And that depresses the quality and the experience of being a renter. And we don't want that. We don't want that in an area where we've got a housing issue where people are having a hard time to buy. You gotta understand something. I love this town. I've been here my whole life. My family's love for this community knows no bounds. And what I get concerned about is when we're not looking at the big picture and trying to figure out ways to make renting a choice, not a default option. The best way to make choice is to create more supply. And that means we've got to put our thinking caps on when it comes to zoning and when it comes to applications. And when you look at a legislation like this, it's entirely punitive and disincentivizing in so many ways that haven't really been discussed. Everyone takes for granted that new product is coming. But what they fail to recognize is that not enough town boards have been as growth-minded as this one has been. Most towns in this in our area and this state say no. And that's why we've got the problem we have. We want to keep young families here. We don't want them to leave to go south because they can't find a place that they can afford. That happens with supply. The last thing I want to say is that a big part of what happens next here is going with the flow or trying to rise above. And I think that everybody here should say no to this rule, because what we want to do here is actually create an environment where tenants feel protected by having more choice, and that property owners don't feel like they've got to screen out and not take chances on people that are trying to get up to the next level. And you also want to make sure that you're not in a situation where you've got to bake in and crank in maximum increases to then cover that margin of that one problem tenant that you may have, or that improved kitchen that you wanted to build. You may say no to it. And drip by drip, we'll start chipping away at the quality of the renter experience. Think about who we're doing it for. We're doing it, yes, to protect tenants, but if you look at the law, the primary beneficiaries of this will be the people who can abuse it. And we have a great town here. We're unique, it's special, it's a trusting community, and I think that this law wasn't written for our town, and I discourage you from passing it. Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak?
Hi, good evening. My name is Rich Lanzarone. I'm the executive director of the Hudson Valley Property Owners Association. I live in Accord, New York. But our association represents hundreds of small landlords who are providing safe and affordable housing throughout the Hudson Valley, and dozens in Dutchess County, and including those here in Pleasant Valley. So, in preparation for coming tonight, I went on the NewYorkCourts.gov site to their eviction dashboard to see, well, how many evictions have there been in Pleasant Valley so far this year? You know the answer? 0. So I look back to all of 2024 to see how many evictions there were. Exactly 0. By the way, this website breaks down evictions by not paying rent or other reasons, whatever. It's a nice website. So then I look back to 2023. That's as far back as I went, and the answer was 0. So the question is this a law that's trying to solve a problem that doesn't really exist here in Pleasant Valley? That's the question. And so, while apparently this good cause eviction law is helping exactly 0, it will hurt a lot of tenants. It will have unintended consequences, and let me explain. So I'm also a landlord. So, and I have property in Kingston, which adopted good cause eviction. So what happened? So now I need to be very careful and vet my tenant applicants very carefully. So I used to accept a 650 credit score. Now I need a 720 credit score, which, by the way, is the average credit score in the United States. So if you don't have a 720 credit score, I'm not approving you as a tenant. And I used to accept 3 times the rent, 3 times your income, 3 times the rent in your income. It's now 4 times. And so so while it's helping no one, it's hurting all tenants who are now looking to get approved and looking for apartments. There's another problem why it hurts tenants. So I get complaints from my tenants that some of their co-tenants are objectionable because they leave smelly garbage in the hallway, they don't clean up after their dog, they leave the doors unlocked, the kids have to walk through the hallways and smell weed all the time, there's people coming and going. I have a very simple solution to that problem, and that is I just wait out that person's lease, and I don't renew their lease. But if you approve this law, then I have to offer them a lease or take them to court. And I take them to court, and they basically promise the judge they're going to change their ways, and they're back in the apartment. And the rest of the tenants are now aggravated. I'm not living there. So who's actually hurt by this? It's the tenants who are living there. So, I understand you're going to take a vote tonight. You need to think very carefully that you're actually helping no one, but hurting a lot of tenants. So that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak?
Hey, I'm Gary Serene from 19 Gretna Woods. Gary Serene, 19 Gretna Woods. I think this is good legislation and we should pass it.
Hi, Mary Meyer, Clark Heights. While I appreciate the owners that are here, we have to also not lose sight of why our town needs this regulation. It's for those people that have landlords. These ones that are here might be good, but there are owners out there that may not be, and those residents feel like they have no way to keep their housing. I think people have come before to say the same thing, and I think that's why we need this. We need it to help those that need the help if there are problems with where they're living, and that's why I think we should pass this. Thank you.
Good evening, Stephen Tinkelman, 314 Drake Road, Pleasant Valley. I'm here to speak on this, a few comments. One is the free market allows a landlord to make decisions based upon a property, and each property is different and has different requirements and different needs. This law impacts greatly some of the older apartments that have been built in the community that are operating successfully, but for them to continue to operate successfully, properties like ourselves and our bodies need to have improvements and throughout the course of a year, a decade, whatever. And if you have limitations on the free market requirements, it becomes more difficult to keep properties in really excellent shape so that they're places that you can be proud of and that people enjoy living in. So one of the things that the law does is articulates some limitations that may not be to the best interest of the property, and and therefore creating more hardship for some tenants. So I think that some of the things that Mr. Dyson had mentioned earlier about supply and demand are also, you know, really on course here, because I mean, one of the reasons that rents are where they are is there's just not enough housing here. And if we can figure out that as you know, maybe the mission here, because there are laws in place that protect tenants now, and the court systems, the building departments, all that also protect the quality of you know, of the built environment. So I think that that you have more control in your community by creating your own laws and enforcing them more than just one of these generic documents here that really limit the ability to you know, to navigate in very specific areas of a particular property. So I would hope that you would look at this law. There may be some important components in it that are worth adopting, and maybe that's a good discussion of taking some of the things that are really meaningful and enacting them, and pulling other things that are really not beneficial to our community. Thank you.
Hi there, Arun Fricker, 117 Valley View. I have two key points that I want to make. One is I've been living in Pleasant Valley for 5 years now. My wife and I bought a house in the peak era where housing was at its peak in the COVID times. And I think, to me, this is, when reading the law, this is what it's intending to be instructed for, is when housing rates spiked during COVID, people were priced out of areas that they had been living in for 20, 30 years. That to me is what this law is trying to protect against, is protecting against landlords trying to take advantage of people and taking advantage of the economy. So that's the primary point. The other point is one of somewhat socialism. You know, shelter is a basic human right, and it shouldn't be a capitalistic need that we're making profit off of people's basic right to human shelter. And I know that's part of, you know, American dream, but to me that's one of the primary standard points of this law, is that you can still be a landlord, you can still provide access to shelter, you can still make all of the adjustments you need to your property. There are a lot of stipulations involved here. This is just about good cause eviction. So, thank you.
Anyone else like to speak?
Kara Winters. I'm actually a property manager for about 200 units throughout Dutchess County. We have, as a property manager, so I'm not on the landlord or the tenant, I'm actually here to help both sides, and I do have some views on the good cause eviction. In towns that have adopted it, we have run into issues. People end up in eviction because they don't pay their bills. They also, the landlords are responsible for paying their portion of providing that housing. So yes, we want to make sure that housing is affordable for tenants, but at the same sense, those landlords that own those multifamily or single family homes are paying taxes, they're paying insurance, they're paying their fair share that go to the town itself also. In doing so, if you're limiting that while also trying to protect the tenant, you're creating an issue. Because like the one gentleman said, if someone does go into eviction and they end up paying and you want to non-renew them, you're not allowed to with the good cause eviction. So now the landlord's stuck with this tenant that is incurring more expenses, but yet at the same time not recouping anything for that shelter. So yes, the cause behind it has good purpose, but there are a lot of flaws that have been previously mentioned. And I would ask, having been on both sides of trying to manage both tenants and the landlord and protecting both, this is not a good cause to adopt. there are too many flaws and it needs to be looked at and revisited. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Royal Parker. I live in Pleasant Valley. So, yeah, how y'all doing? Thanks so much for being here. Thank you so much. I wanted to just hope that people come in here with an open mind, you know, maybe to hear what other people might have to say that might not agree with what they already kind of felt like they want, you know, and kind of maybe open up to new ideas, because I know sometimes I can get closed off and think I already got my mind made up and not want to hear what other people got to say. So, you know, I was listening to the YouTube, you know, on the way over here, you know, and I feel like there was a lot of people that came up here and were for it, that they didn't really have much to say, but they said that they were for it. You know, sometimes a short message, you know, is all that you need to know, you know, where the other people who were against it really didn't, they said a lot. But you know, so I just want to say, you know, sometimes a short message is all you need. You know, it says enough. You know, it doesn't have to be long and, you know, a lot of stuff. It could just be, yes, you know, I agree. You know, I come up here and I just want to say, you know, I like to keep it, you know, real candid and, you know, kind of, you know, I was looking up about this law, you know, and I personally feel like, I remember somebody was talking about, like, the average credit score report, 720. You know, I'm like 35, you know, and I know when I was coming out of college, that was like so hard to get. You know, I didn't have that type of credit report. You know, I was still having a lot of credit debt with the school loans and stuff, you know, and looking to get a house was like out of the picture. You know, I just didn't even, I thought that I was going to come out and get a degree and be able to make money, you know, like 6 figures. It wasn't a thing. You know, and this is like, I'm a part of the younger generation. I don't know how old anybody else is, but you know what I mean? And that was the dream I was sold. You know, then I said, well, I'm going to have to go and get rent. I want to get out of my mom's house, you know? I'm talking about everyday, just everyday things, right? And it just wasn't a thing for me, because then you want to know how much I make. Well, I definitely don't make 3 times as much, you know, coming out of college. I don't. You know, these are things that I just don't. And then raising the rent, you know, like I you know, so I was thinking, like, you know, that's just not me. So, you know, and so talked about the law makes it harder to remove tenants, but it doesn't prevent them from non-payment, lease violations, and illegal activities to evict people. It simply prevents unjust displacement. You know, which is something that I feel is a good cause. Rising costs are an everyday fact for working people. You know, I think about the community and how everyday costs for everyday people are constantly on the rise, but it seems like the pay rate doesn't always go up as much. You know, so I always think about that, especially with rent. You know, and how every year I'm wondering, you know, how much is it going to go up? I'm at the mercy of it. You know, it would be nice if there could be a cap. You know, like if it can't go up too much, you know, because how am I going to afford it? I don't make as much, you know, it's just, so it's hard. And that puts a lot of stress on a person, you know, and how am I going to be a part of a community in a positive, healthy way when I'm constantly worrying about how am I going to make the rent? You know, how am I going to go home at night and rest my head on the pillow knowing that, you know, I don't know if I'm going to be able to pay my bills, you know, but I want to go out and be a part of, you know, and be on the rec leagues and coach and ref and do all these wonderful things, but I don't know if I can make rent because, you know, my landlord might up the rent a crazy amount of money, you know. And then I thought about, you know, my great aunt who's like living on, you know, her retirement plan, you know, and she's got a fixed income, you know, and she's, God bless her, she got the community to support her around her. You know, and if she got displaced, you know, if it wasn't for the people that take out her garbage, she can't even do it. You know, and it's like those are the people that I think about getting displaced if the rent goes up too high. You know, and then I also was thinking about it's the supply and demand thing, you know, and I was thinking about how it could actually encourage more competition forcing landlords to create better incentives and maintain quality properties and offer fair prices to attract tenants, protectors, renters, doesn't hurt business, simply raise the standards for what a good, quote unquote, rental market looks like, you know? So that, I thought about that, and then, you know, last but not least, you know, I thought about, you know, getting the government more involved in the housing market, you know, and housing to me is a basic human need. I feel like that's something that, you know, anyone should have, and it's not just a financial asset. And as far as society, you know, it should be able to protect the people and not exploit the people. So if government is going to be more involved and not exploit people, you know, because this law could help protect it, then I think there's no harm in that, to make some more responsibilities on the landlords rather than the tenant, which is families, which is everyday people. You know, the tenant is a person. You know, I want to say that, you know. So, you know, I just wanted to say that. Thank you so much.
Anyone else want to speak? Okay.
Yeah, we can make a, if you'd like to make a motion to close it. We have had this open for 2 sessions now, so.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing of local law amending the town code of Pleasant Valley by enacting a new chapter 72 entitled Residential Rentals.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, our next local law is a continuation of local law amending Chapter 98 of the Town Code with regard to accessory dwelling units. I'd like a motion to open that up again.
So moved.
All in favor?
Hold on, we just need a second.
Oh, sorry.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
May I just note what's changed about this law?
Yes, sure.
So after the input that the board received, we did make some changes to the law. And so the version that you have tonight with the agenda that's marked print 2, I believe, I just want to point to the few changes that are in there. One is that accessory dwelling units would, in this new version, would be up to 2 bedrooms instead of just 1 bedroom. There is a notification to the fire department when any ADU is approved. Let's see. We changed a little bit of language that the county planning asked for about, just to clarify some language about that ADUs can be within an existing building or an addition. And we also made a change so that right now the town code has a section for cottages, for, what is it? Thank you, Dan. Caretaker cottages, that says that they can't be, no money can be exchanged, and so there's an exception there for ADUs and also short-term rentals. I think those are the changes. So the comments should be focused on the new version if possible. Thank you.
Would anybody like to speak?
Hi, Mary Meyer. The only one was on number 4. You guys had increased it to 2 bedrooms, but only left it at 2 people. I know that there were some discussions at the last one that they would maybe increase it to 3, in case you had a husband and wife and a teenager that needed to live in the ADU. But I know that that wasn't changed, so I don't know whether there's any idea of changing that. Just if you have a husband and wife and a child, or you have a grandma and grandfather and a small child, that you may want it to be 3 persons. Currently, it says not limited to no more than 2. So I was hoping you would consider that change.
Hi again, Rich Lanzarone, Executive Director, Hudson Valley Property Owners Association. I applaud this law because it basically is recognition of the fact that supply needs to be increased. And increased supply leads to lower rents and lower housing costs. I'll just point out that in the city of Austin, Texas, last year, rents dropped by 22%. How did that happen? That's a good thing. We'd like to see that happen here. Because builders, responded to the demand for more housing, and they wound up like what usually happens is they overbuilt. And so while the ADUs are a good step forward, I just want to point out that for 20 years, I served on the planning board of the town of Marbletown in Ulster County. 10 years as its chairman. I also served on the Ulster County Planning Board. And so what I want to say is, while ADUs is a good step forward, it's really only a first step. And if you really want to, basically take a hold of the problem, you really need to take a look at your planning and zoning. And, this is a home rule state. And I would point out that the town board has the ability to classify as a type 2 action, meaning exempt from SEQR, any development which does not increase the population of the town by more than 1%. That is, you could do that right now. And by doing that, you would eliminate 90% of the lawsuits that happen every time somebody proposes housing. Actually, we have to come to you realize that every time somebody proposes any kind of sizable housing development, there's opposition, and sometimes it's very organized. And that opposition has been successful across the state, including here, in stopping very much needed housing. Now, so we need radical action beyond just ADUs, and so I'm just suggesting to the board to consider things like eliminating, I'm not sure, I haven't read your code, but many towns have multifamily is allowed use in a residential zone, but then there's a special use permit process. I suspect most towns have this. And if the use is allowed, it should just be allowed without because the special use permit process creates a situation where it creates openings for opponents to now, lodge lawsuits and just attack the proposals. I'll just point out that I own property in Kingston and all through Ulster County. The city of Kingston just adopted a very interesting zoning where you can build up to an eight unit property as of right on any residential lot, meaning no SEQR, no planning board, no zoning board, no special use permit. There is a checklist review by their planning department.
Sir, I don't really want to interrupt you, but
Okay,
we really need to stay on the ADU thing.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
No problem. I just want to point out that it's a step in the right direction, but I'm encouraging you to do a lot more. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak?
I'll try again. Gary Veter, 12 Point Turnpike. I hope you have in your budget enough money to increase the personnel in the zoning office with all these laws that you're making. The zoning administrator is part-time. Most of these actions are going to be troublesome after he's gone in the morning. So I heard a gentleman talk about price of houses and so forth and taxes. Think about it. Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak about ADUs? Okay.
Arun Fricker again. So I was just reading B5. I was a little confused. You took out single-family dwelling and just put building. Is that the principal building? Sorry. B bullet 5. I assume it's a principal building. Otherwise, that's the only thing I.
Which section?
Which,
D?
B5, it says the minimum gross area of the ADU shall be 400 square feet. The maximum gross area shall be 40% of the entire gross floor area of the building. I assume it's supposed to be meant principal building. So the max area can't be 40% greater than the floor area of 40% of the principal building.
Shall be.
Meaning you can't build like a mega mansion next to a small house.
Right, yeah, it should be the principal building. So we could clarify that.
Principal existing? I mean, principal is that?
the main house. The main
Yeah.
house. Right, the main house.
The principal building, I think that'll work.
Anyone else like to speak? Okay, so should we close this now?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing on the proposed law for accessory dwelling units.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. I'd like a motion to accept the meeting minutes for the workshop meeting with 2 public hearings on 5/5/25.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All official correspondence is on file in the town clerk's office. We have no presentations tonight. I'd like a motion to open the public comment portion of the meeting. It is one time only, 3 minutes per person for agenda items only.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Would anybody like to speak about agenda item?
Hi there, Megan Borland, 26 Oxford Road. So I just wanted to talk about the beautification committee. We've had a couple of great meetings with the group. And I see that there's a discussion today about the change in the resolution. I think it's a good change that you made in the resolution to take out the language about including the rec department and the maintenance folks in the meeting. We can definitely make sure that we keep them in the loop as we're doing this work, especially right through our liaison to the town board. And I did want to ask if you could consider tonight appointing a chair for the committee. That is in the resolution that the board should appoint the chair. There are 5 members of the committee. I'm the only one who has indicated interest in the chair. The other folks have indicated that they would support me being the chair. And presumably, the chair calls the meeting and creates agendas, so it's a little difficult to move forward with the work of the committee without a chair being appointed. So I'd like you to consider appointing a chair so that we can keep up the good work. We've had a lot of awesome discussions and a lot of really great ideas that are coming out to beautify our town, and we're excited to keep going with that. So thank you.
Hi everyone, Michelle Fioretti from 7 Patricia Drive. I wasn't here for the last meeting, but I know that my
concerns were shared by my mom. I do want to just express that I appreciate all of the thought and consideration that you've put into this. I know you've made a lot of modifications, but the primary concern that I think many of us still have is enforcement. And these rules are great, but as someone else mentioned, a lot of things happen after hours. You know, he said, she said, and so if we're not going to be able to enforce the regulations and restrictions, then my vote would be, and I think I speak for many of us, that we do not permit short-term rentals in our neighborhoods. So, thank you.
Here we go. Kelly Rettle Hardesty, 11 Applegate Lane, Hyde Park. I'm just reviewing again the short-term rental law that was in the package tonight. I was hoping that you folks had looked at maybe some of the videos I had sent you that show the absolute nuisance that happens on my private road, including 2 women with baby carriages coming out my driveway with a UPS truck trying to come in. I'm not 100% positive how you think I'm going to remove myself from the liability. These people continue to raise havoc on me every single weekend, including transportation from the airport, all lit up like a Christmas tree that's flying in at 10 o'clock at night. You saw many videos of that one family. They thought that the road was their form of entertainment for the whole weekend. What you don't see in those videos are the 2 ponds at the end of our driveway, one on the Arnoff side, one on my side. I don't know what's going on down there. I know that at least 14 of those folks that weekend were collected on the front of the Arnoff's red barn in their driveway, doing what I don't know. And then you saw the following weekend with the people walking up and down the road several times. I don't know what you consider a nuisance. If you don't consider this a nuisance, it's completely beyond my comprehension. Especially the fact that you understand that every problem that happens on that property belongs to me and the neighbors. I'm still amazed that you're overriding the zoning and allowing this kind of lodging to happen in any zoning, residential zoning within the entire town. I've never seen this in any other town code. And so the town of East Fishkill just eliminated a lot of the residential areas for short-term rentals and did not allow them on shared roads as well. I don't know how many more times I can ask you and basically beg you to get these people off my private property. We get a new set of people every weekend. I don't care how nice everybody thinks the owner of that house is. He can't control the 15, 18, 20 people that are up in that house every weekend. They're just doing, and again, this is a whole different thing. It's like Weekend at Bernie's up there. They get dropped off, left alone. And I also don't understand how you're going to control 8 people unless the zoning administrator is going to go up there and count heads every time somebody walks in and out of one of these short-term rentals. I think I've beat this horse to a pulp, and I don't understand why it's still falling on dead ears. It's really concerning to me. But there again, it is still in the town code I've been personally working on for 2 years with a past administration. And I don't understand how this code took a complete turn from what it was originally brought to this town for it as. And don't know how many more ways I can say this, but thank you again.
Anyone else like to speak?
Gary Veeder, Saw Point Turnpike, Pleasant Valley. I haven't seen anything prior to the agenda here with new teaming. I haven't seen what its proposed cost is, etc. What the agreement with the county is, haven't seen it. So I think before action, it's already well behind schedule for this, but it's just a concern. Thank you.
Monica Meddy, 17 Patricia Drive. I just wanted to say that I agree with everything Michelle said. The biggest thing is enforcement. How is that going to happen when it's evenings and weekends and we don't have people working those hours? The other thing is if Kelly's having problem right now with enforcement, what's gonna happen to ours? Ours is being sold. And I heard it's an LLC buying it. It's not a resident, it's not a homeowner. So it's not gonna stop. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, I'd like a motion to close the public portion comment in the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we have new business discussion, the RFP for fireworks. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. They put it out for, how many people, Mary Beth? For the fireworks? 4, and only 1 person responded, correct? But it's the same company as last year, and it can be accepted tonight, but then if it needs to, we need to like say something where it's when we get to it, that it can be changed if necessary due to the committee that we're starting up. So, yeah, it's, what company, Young?
Yes.
Young Fireworks, yeah, it's the same one as last year. Okay, Pleasant Valley Recreation Basketball, Nikki Santos and Rich Chapman.
Good evening. Thank you for taking the time to listen to us tonight. I mean, I handed everyone talking points. Did you get it, Councilwoman Chapman? I'm not sure if you got this. Steal your husband's. I stole his. I'm just going to go through the talking points quickly so we can get to the discussion. I just kind of want to give you guys an update of what's going on. A program overview for basketball. We have approximately 300 children who register for basketball every year. It's a crazy big program. We rent gyms at Noxon, West Road, Traver Road, School, LMS, ASM, and BOCES every day. Pleasant Valley is one of the few towns in New York State running large in-house sports leagues, which is challenging under typical municipal policies. Our first issue is we have a referee shortage and payroll challenges. So as we all know, we had to change the way that we pay the refs. It's been an issue because we ended up losing a bunch of them who did not want to go on payroll. And I kind of wanted to bring it to your attention tonight because we want to figure out what the next steps are. Obviously, we don't want to lose our basketball program, so we need to figure out a way to keep these refs with us. We understand the need for compliance with comptroller and insurance requirements, but we need an alternative solution. Rich and I have been talking. We were thinking about a junior ref training program where we train teens and young adults to referee PV rec games. The only issue with that is oversight. So if we train these refs, what's to say they're not going to go ref somewhere else, which is what our concern is. Another issue that we have is communication, scheduling, and logistics. The current scheduling is done via a large Excel spreadsheet, which is Councilman Deegan's least favorite thing about basketball. We send it weekly to over 50 coaches. Common issues which you can imagine are lost emails, formatting problems, and difficulty viewing onto mobile devices. Rosters are manually created from over 300 registrants and broken down into 35 team sheets, that's however many teams we have, consuming significant staff hours. As you can imagine, we work on this day in and day out. Our proposed technology solution. So I've been working with Peter, our sports director, who works in cybersecurity, and we researched platforms used by other towns. NBC Sports Engine is something that Supervisor Albrecht did sign a contract for, which we appreciate. It was confirmed to meet compliance, the highest data protection, and it provides secure data storage, access control, and regular compliance checks. There has been concern since signing the contract about connecting financials to NBC, basically allowing the town to receive money through NBC to allow registrants to actually register on NBC as opposed to MyRec, which is the current website that we use now. A meeting is scheduled next month with NBC to go over these financials, but I do think it's very important that we start moving into the 21st century with this sports league. We've kind of capped it. We are desperate. We need better communication. We need better scheduling. We need to be able to have major oversight over these sports programs, and it is very hard for us as a town because we compete against other private sports clubs. We don't compete against other towns who are allowed to use these apps, who are allowed to do more than what we're allowed to do. So I understand that there is difficulty there. But I do want to clarify that we are not replacing MyRec with NBC Sports Engine. They do serve different purposes. So MyRec is, if you go to pvrec.com, that's MyRec. That's our website. That's where all of our information is, our disclaimers, all of our forms, basically everything. NBC Sports Engine would just be used for sports team management. So right now we're using it for adult basketball without the financials, and it's been amazing. I can oversee everything that's going on in adult basketball, as can Rich. We're in all of the chats for all of the teams. They can reach out to us directly, all the participants. But the only difficulty is we've had to collect cash because we're not using MyRec. And it's easier because it's 10 team payments, but I can't do that for 300 basketball players and their families to collect cash. That's not going to work, which is why we're asking to connect the financials to NBC so that we can use this platform. And what's amazing about it is that every family that registers on NBC Sports Engine gets to use the app for free, and we can all connect on there, and there's just major oversight through the rec department. We're not looking to outsource. I don't want to get rid of these programs at all. This is what Pleasant Valley Rec is known for. Yes, we're trying to build, we're trying to create more events, but we are known for our sports, especially basketball. But we just need to modernize. It's time. Like I said, we've capped it at where we can go. We just got to move forward. And this aligns us with other clubs that we work with. So Beekman Rec, we work with them for basketball every single day. Rich and I can't even tell you how many problems we have with scheduling and communication with them. It's insane. We lose track between the emails that we have, the text messages. We have to remember that all of these programs happen at night after work hours. So it transitions from emails during the day to text messages at night. They'll text Rich, they'll forget to text me, or I'll text Rich, and then Rich texts Beekman. It's a mess. We're missing games, parents are showing up at wrong schools. It's just not, it's not working. We just need to move forward, and they have this app, and a lot of other programs, a lot of other private sports clubs have these apps. So it's just going to make it a lot easier for us to move forward with our programs. And this would also apply to soccer as well, and whatever other sports we do. If we do for adult basketball, we do adult soccer, any sports would funnel through NBC. So I think the goal of this is for, obviously, you guys to discuss and let us know what you think, and then I would hope that I could bring a resolution after meeting with Melanie next month to the board to approve the financials being connected, and we can move forward from there. Do you have anything you want to say?
I just want to touch base. Rich Chapman, Pleasant Valley Basketball Director, Youth Program, and I also do the adult program as well. We need these refs. That's my biggest thing. I've touched base with it with Supervisor Albrecht a little bit. I know we have rules that we have to follow with the comptroller, the insurance company. We've touched base on it a little bit, and I know her hands are tied with that, but we have to try to figure something out, because before you know it, October is going to be here, and we need to get refs. Last year we only had 2 certified refs. I had 2 junior refs that are dedicated, and then we were able to find another ref to help us out who's not a patch ref. But we have over 300 kids. I think there was 330 last year. We have 33 teams. You're talking 33 head coaches, assistant coaches, parents, everybody's involved. I just can't touch base enough on that. The NBC app is good. I like it for the point of communication. It's hard for the communication. With anything, communication is key. It makes it a lot easier, especially when things go wrong at night with the schools or whatnot. People can get a hold of each other, because not everybody has everybody's phone number. You see that? I just think it's important to keep things in town. I don't think we were trying to outsource it, but I know I played in this league. I don't want to date myself, 35, 40 years ago with Mr. Dyson. Mr. Dyson used to play. I have some dedicated coaches, one that I might have forced a time or two beg to play Mike, the coach, again after he retired. I just, you know what? This is a program that I truly love. I was a director a long time ago. I had to leave for a while. I came back because we were in danger of losing the program because the last director left. Something I feel deeply about, and I hope, you know, we just keep it going. And my main thing is refs for the next season because it will be here sooner than later. All right. Thank you guys for your time.
Thank you guys for everything you do.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Nikki, can I just ask you a question, really quick?
Shush. Yes, ma'am.
What does soccer do for registrations and communication? Do they use MyRec?
It's a mess as well. Yeah, it's so hard to communicate. MyRec was not set up to communicate for sports at all. There's a way to put the schedule in there. It's very difficult to do. Parents can't download an app. They have to actually log on to the website, which we tried it last season and it didn't really work out very well. I did try to use MyRec for sports, and you can't really communicate on there at all. So
Can you use this for soccer as well?
yes, it can be used for any sport
Cool.
that we have. Yeah, it's just MyRec was not built for sports, and NBC is.
Okay. What are they currently using though? They are using MyRec soccer?
Yeah, no, what we currently do is we work for hours and hours and download spreadsheets and
Text
work in the
groups.
90s. Yeah, and text groups. And I think another important part of this too is, you know, our coaches are amazing. This is a great community for Pleasant Valley, all of our sports programs. But we'll have one coach who's texting their team. We have one coach who emails their team. We have one coach who only calls their team. And we get complaints about it all the time. Well, how come last season my coach texted, but my coach won't text this time? If I could just tell everybody, hey, listen, we're using the NBC Sports Engine app. Everybody's going to be set up on there. I'll have all the teams listed out, and that's where we're communicating. You get to download the app for free, and you get all the perks for free. The town paid for the program. I feel like that's the best way for us to move forward instead of having all of these separate conversations all over the place. I mean, Rich and I have probably 10 group texts between all the coaches just for basketball, plus coach texts, plus coach emails. That's an understatement. Plus coach emails. Plus
Listen, I know.
You know. Plus the adult
I know.
basketball texts. Plus this, I have 15 texts going on for soccer right now. It's just.
I hear the phone going off at
She knows. I get yelled
till-
at when I call Rich after a certain time.
a lot. In regards to the refs,
Yes.
how many other towns have in-house basketball programs?
Not many. I know of 2 in Putnam County and Dutchess County, and I worked for both of them. So it's not many towns do what we do. And it's hard. I understand it's hard because we have to follow a different set of rules. And I get that, but we have to figure out an alternative or
he's
we're going to
coming
lose our
back.
whole basketball program. When you come down to it, we have games every night when we get to January, and that's 2 refs needed at every game at all the schools. And we had to cancel so many games last year. So many parents were disappointed and upset, understandably, because you pay for a service from the town and we're canceling on you because our refs aren't showing up. We're losing refs our refs decided not to ref for us the day that games started last year. And that was very disappointing to have to push back the start of the season. And I understand where they're coming from, but at this point, it's been almost a year, so we just need to figure out what we're going to do.
Can I
moving
give you some
forward.
homework?
Oh, boy, sure.
Can you please contact predominantly a lot of the towns in Dutchess County to
Yeah.
see what they're doing for refs for basketball, either in-house or out-house?
So
Just
we
'cause
did- so
this
like-
is obviously an epidemic right
Well,
now
no,
for us.
so for soccer, the Hudson Valley Youth Soccer League, they will pay up front for the refs for us, and then we pay them. The Basketball Association doesn't want to do that for us. That's the issue. Supervisor Albrecht did talk to them, and they weren't interested in doing that. So that is the issue that we have with basketball. We pay back the Hudson Valley Youth Soccer League. They're willing to do it, but they only do that for us because we're a town we can't pay. Most of the time, you pay your refs on the spot. When your ref does a game, they get paid that day.
Well, I know with youth football, we used to pay the refs on the spot.
Yeah, but we can't
We
as
would
a
hand them a check.
municipality, which
Right.
is the problem, and that's what the issue we're running into. So now we can't pay on the spot. Now we can't pay by voucher. Now they're getting taxes taken out. So now they want raises, or they don't want to be put on payroll, and they're just dropping like flies. And we don't know what to do at this point.
There has to be an option. There has to be an option somewhere. And I know just from watching, again, I'm going to date myself now. My son is almost 26, and I've watched parents walk onto basketball courts. I've watched kids fight. I've watched parents go after refs. I've watched coaches go after refs. We cannot have youth reffing high school games.
No.
End
no.
of story.
100%.
We must have patched refs.
Yes. So right now.
No exceptions.
We have no patch refs. But we
We
do
must have
We
patched refs at high
one
school level.
patched ref, then we have a very good, no.
Tom,
Well,
Tom,
Jermaine
Tom.
is, we have two technically. Then I got 4 juniors really. But the problem is there's only one real ref association around. It's the one we just talked about. It's just like Little League. They have head assigners for different areas. There's the 2 mats, we call them, Matt for our area, and then there's another Matt for the town of Beekman. 2 great guys. And then there's the head guy, the president, which is Mark. We've talked to him, we've gone back and forth, but it's up to these refs that they want to be subcontractors basically. They want to be paid by voucher, which I understand we can't do that. But I'm just hoping that we could figure a happy medium somewhere.
Well-
Maybe if we go back and talk to the comptroller, maybe we talk back to the insurance company, maybe we go back and talk to Matt's, and maybe there's another way we can approach this, because without refs, our program's hurting.
We will lose 330 plus kids of a program that we have built up
Well,
for
it's
so
not just
long.
the kids, we have parents, we have coaches, assistant coaches. It's a community.
Yeah.
It is a full
Adult
community.
basketball legitimately came from youth basketball. That's how we created adult basketball, because the adults were coming up to Rich and coming up to everybody else saying, hey, when can we do this for adults? And then Rich brought that to me and we decided to initiate it. But that's how it started. And that's how other programs continue to work that are involved with basketball. It's through youth basketball. So you have summer hoops, we have basketball camp. It's a big community. But we're not going to be able to run it this year if we don't have the refs. We
Right.
need patched refs.
Well, and I urge Councilman Reifenberg, I'm sure Councilman Cookingham has seen it also, and Supervisor Albrecht. If you've never seen a high school basketball game, it's intense. Okay, it's really intense to the point where we've had throwdowns with parents going after refs and going after kids. We can't have youth refs on that court. It's a liability. It's a safety issue. It's a safety concern for everybody involved. We need to find an alternative, and it needs to be done now.
100%.
It cannot wait until August or September. We need to find an alternative now. There has to be something we can do.
So that's with what you're saying, we would never schedule youth, and you know that, we would never
Right.
schedule youth
But
refs,
even
but
unpatched
we would
refs, to me, is not an
unpatched refs,
option.
Yes, but then we would just have to cancel the high school division if we don't get any
Right,
more.
and that's not
patched
okay.
refs.
Can I ask you a couple questions and a couple comments? So are other towns paying by voucher?
So the previous town I worked for, they did pay by voucher.
Why are they able to and we can't?
My impression is that we were audited, and that is what.
Okay, so,
Supervisor Albrecht.
excuse me.
It's insurance, not an
I'm
audit,
gonna,
right?
first of all, patched ref. Brief description, Rich, of what
Oh,
the
sorry.
actual because so that everybody at home
It's an
knows
official
what we're
referee.
because everybody's
It's,
like,
it's an
what-
official referee who
training.
went through training, went through an organization, and they are paid certified official refs. They have a patch, just like a Little League umpire.
Right.
They've gone through training.
The refs you see at a high
Okay.
school
And
game
they
are
do
patched
get paid
refs.
more money. Sorry.
So what happened here was we went through an audit. And what was found is that we were paying people to work that didn't really have the correct insurance. So if somebody wants to be a patched ref and work for us directly, they have to have their own little business, DBA, whatever, and have their own business insurance. Because we can't cover them unless they're on our payroll. So what we've done is we've put a lot of these kids on our payroll so we know that they're covered by insurance. So if somebody smacks them in the side of the head, they're going to get covered by it, okay? And I know this happens. So this is a real problem, and I understand that. But we can, you say you want to talk to them. The insurance company's not even going to think about it. Okay, they've already told me that. The place that does this from Connecticut, what is it called? The athletic, the referee,
It's Mid-Hudson, that's all I know.
Mid-Hudson referees.
But-
So this is, they only want us to pay the people directly. So I called, I talked to somebody, and I said, we will send you a check every month for all the refs, and then you pay your refs from there. That way they're covered under your insurance, and we don't have to be concerned about this. You can pay them any way you want, without payroll, with a 1099, whatever. The answer was no. So we are still back at square one trying to figure this out. There may be another thing that we might be able to do to give an incentive to people that I told Emily I'm going to write up tomorrow. We were just discussing it a little bit. Whether it would work or not, I don't know, but we'll give it the Girl Scout try tomorrow.
What if Skyhawks handled the refs?
One other thing, I just want to go back to that, what Daniel, you asked what other towns do it. Beekman does do it through voucher with these refs. With these same refs, the same organization, Beekman does do vouchers. So I don't know what they're doing different that our town isn't, but I also believe it's Fishkill and Wappingers also pay by voucher.
Wappingers does not pay by voucher. I called and spoke to the supervisor.
I will check up on that again, but I was told different. That's all I can say. I was told, even if it's not Wappingers, I know it's Fishkill, and I know Beekman because I've talked to Matt Grossman, who's the head assigner out there, and I've talked to the recreational director out there, that they do it by voucher, and I've also talked to Fishkill. So I don't know where the disconnect is with everybody and everything, because I don't know your side. I handle the basketball side. I handle anything that goes on the floor and off. But and honestly, I don't care. I care about the kids in the community. I care about our program, and I want to keep it going.
It sounds like a municipality issue. That's what I'm wondering. Can we outsource the reffing issue where there's a private entity that can handle the reffing?
We researched the
Skyhawks.
company that we were using. No, Skyhawks, we actually have hired some of their guys to ref for us on payroll. One is, we've used a couple of them. One is coming back for adult basketball, but it's very hard with them because they coach a lot for the other programs that we have, so we can't.
What I'm asking is
But
the
again,
people,
it's
the
on
refs that
payroll.
wouldn't sign, right, because they didn't want to do the paperwork, would they sign with Skyhawks to let Skyhawks pay them?
I don't know, because we're not paying Skyhawks directly for that. We're paying we're putting them on our payroll.
Right,
Is there
I'm
some way that
trying
we
to see if we can
create
bypass
some
that.
kind of organization that, I think that's something, I have no idea about any of that, so that's something that you guys would all have to discuss, but is there some way that we can create some kind of business entity that we can then put them under? I have no idea how any of that works. But
Well, let's try to continue this tomorrow, because we could probably be here for another 20 minutes arguing this,
The
but
other thing that I was saying, again, I don't know your side of it, but I do know the two Matts very well, and I know Mark, who runs the thing. I do know that they do have their own insurance. They do have their own insurance, and I don't know enough about insurance. I'm not that guy. I'm just a blue-collar carpenter. That, from what I understand, that they're all covered under that insurance. And I know you can't write out a check.
tomorrow we'll discuss this some more. Okay, please? Yeah. We'll
Sounds good.
discuss
Thank you
more
for
of
having
this
us.
tomorrow. Thank you.
Chris Dyson, once again. I'm one of the rare alumni who played in Pleasant Valley Youth Basketball and then made it all the way up to the Adult League. I just want to say that when you hear the commitment here that these folks have to our kids, when you hear the love that they have for developing these kids and then actually providing an outlet for adults to play, it's healthy, it's positive, it builds community. This is our strength. This is our strength. We raise each other's kids here. I think we all look to each other. This is not outsourced. It's not professional. This is volunteer passion. These folks have full-time, busy lives, everyone who's involved. But this is one of our attractors. The first thing people say when they come.
I hate to say this, I have to stop you.
Oh.
Because we're not in a public thing. This was the discussion for
I thought this was
basketball.
on the agenda.
I'm so sorry.
Oh. Oh, it's a procedural thing, man? Sorry. I'll save it for.
We don't like to kill the positive
You can
energy,
come back
but
in a bit.
Help him.
Yeah, you can come back
Hold those
when
thoughts.
we open it again.
We can do it. You can do it at the end of the meeting.
But we love your passion.
it's got to be just as nice later, though.
Okay, we're going to move on to the pump house at the mill site. Basically, what is going on is the Pleasant Valley Fire District is going to be redoing the pump house, putting a whole new pump and whole new facility out on the side of it. And they want to start within the next 2 weeks. As part of Article 5G of the General Municipal Law, we really need to authorize into a municipal cooperative agreement with them. So our attorney has made up a resolution to do just that, so that we can allow the Pleasant Valley Fire Department to use the pump house and use it for pumping the water for our town, for fires and all sorts of things. Do you want to add to that?
No, it's perfect.
Okay.
We have the resolution later in the agenda.
Yes, yeah. Okay, old business discussion, short-term rental law discussion.
May I just explain procedurally something about these two laws?
Sure.
So I just want to explain where we are with the various laws. The short-term rental law and the accessory dwelling unit law both have had a number of public hearings and sessions and discussions. And so they're not on for a vote tonight because they need to be in final form for 10 days before you vote. And there were changes made leading up to this meeting. So that's why they're on for a discussion tonight. And if you can arrive at a version that you want to put up for a vote at the next meeting, then we can finalize them tonight and then vote at the next meeting. We do also need to do the environmental review on both of those. As far as the good cause eviction, the form has not changed, so that is on for a vote tonight. That's already been in final form. So I just wanted to explain the status of those. Sure. Would you like me to just mention what the changes were on the short-term rental law? Since
Yeah,
the
that's
last time?
fine. Mhm.
So the short-term rental law has been through a lot of iterations, but after the last session, I was asked to make a few changes. So the intention of this law is that short-term rentals would only be allowed if the owner is on site overnight during the period of the rental. And there were a couple of references left over in the law to an agent or a property manager, which that was just my error to not take those out when the law was changed. So the latest version does not refer to any agents or property managers. It only says that the owner would need to be on site overnight during the rental period. The maximum occupancy is now changed to, well, it's 2 per bedroom, but the maximum is 8. It had said 16 before, but now it's a maximum of 8. But if there are fewer than 4 bedrooms, then the maximum is lower. It's 2 per bedroom. The short-term rentals, the hosted short-term rentals would be allowed in any zoning, in any legal dwelling unit in any zoning district that allows dwellings. And we do have a fire department notification, and the total number of permits would be 25. That's all. Yeah.
Does anybody else want to discuss the short-term rentals?
On the short-term rental, I had a couple people ask me about with the minutes and that it stated that they would be grandfathered for the ones that were already in. So does that mean if it's already up and going, we can't do anything to it?
I think that was changed, wasn't it?
I think it says that ones that they have a certain number of days to become
I
one
think
of
it's
those
not up to
25?
90
Is it
days.
90 days
You have to
become licensed.
come into compliance
Okay,
with
and
the
then
new law.
with everybody like they're stating, unfortunately, at 1 o'clock on Fridays, we close. We don't open until Monday back at 9. So if there is any issues, is there gonna be like a hotline? Well, I'm just, you know,
So the way I've seen this in other towns, and I've dealt with it when I was a short-term rental owner, is realistically, no, unless you're in New York City, no town that's adopted any regulation for anything can you call up at 10 o'clock at night to complain about them mowing the lawn or breaking the noise ordinance or anything like that. So the idea that we're going to have a 24-hour person picking up
Right.
to go enforce it, but the idea is the reason we've gotten to where we are with the hosted and not allowing unhosted is an owner has to be on site overnight on the property to allow a short-term rental to be even on the property. So if there's complaints coming in on a Monday morning that they weren't abiding by the noise regulations or something outside, they were violating one of these regulations, then there's a process of pulling their permit and they're done, which we don't have that now. So that's the idea, is that it would be very hard to explain that you were the owner and you were on property and the neighbor complains that people
Correct.
were out running around the yard all night screaming and yelling. Well, where were you? Well, you don't meet the basic requirement of this, and they wouldn't have a short-term rental anymore.
and then another thing is, I was talking to somebody in LaGrange, they were talking about how there's an actual program now that you can get that actually scans for all the Airbnbs and the app and that. Is that something the town could get then?
Yeah, so
then
I've-
that way we would, you know, if Scott Cunningham decides to put an Airbnb, but we don't tell you anybody about
Yeah.
it, but then all of a sudden it flags when somebody goes on their app and says, hey, Scott Cunningham has an Airbnb he's selling here.
So I spoke to the county about it. I think Don Sagliano was still a county legislature, so, I mean,
Okay.
it was probably over a year and a half ago,
Right.
2 years ago. And Deidre has helped. We get $5,000 a year if we adopt a short-term rental law from the county for a program that Granicus has created that basically filters through all the short-term rental apps and websites. And yeah, it pings and it looks for things like that. So if I decide to open a short-term rental, the zoning and planning office will get an email or a notification that, hey, I'm on Airbnb, and they're going to look and they're going to say, well, this person doesn't have a permit, and they're going to end up getting closed because they didn't follow the permitting process. So yeah, we're entitled to money to cover that. And
Okay.
it's always been the intent to do that.
And then also, is there a way to put a fine on that if they're doing it illegally in that? Just because, I mean, there's some other issues in town where I know the zoning has been there and the building inspector's been there, but talking to somebody in the judge department in our town, there's been no judgments against the people, so it's kind of hard. If we're not enforcing the laws.
I agree. We need to
you
have
know,
some kind of
if we're
fines
not
in
gonna
place.
say, hey, you know, you're not doing this, you know, you did it illegal, we gotta fine, and it was just like with the dog parks, we got the dogs back in there, but if you're gonna not listen to us, you gotta follow through with the law to, you know, get fined.
So there's a penalties for offenses section of the law that walks through the process of how that would be handled. And it seems to be pretty strict on suspending the short-term rental permit.
Right,
pretty
but
much
if they
immediately.
don't have one, they're really not gonna worry about the permit.
Well, then they,
You know what I mean? That's why I'm saying if they don't have the
yeah,
permit.
then they go to court.
Okay.
I mean, fining them, they're not gonna, I mean, basically, they're not gonna get one and they're gonna go to court.
Right.
It's a fine up to $1,000, and each week is a separate violation.
Okay.
so.
Yeah, but then we had stated the last time that it was not going to be forgiving the second time. Is that still in
So
there?
what happens the second time?
Like if we give a fee the first time, but then had requested that it be put in for a second time, that it was just taken away. The right to have it was taken away.
So they lose their.
They
their
lose the
permit.
right.
They lose
Yeah.
their right to have it.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes,
And then-
so it gets revoked, I believe for 3 years at least.
Now, if that happens, can they potentially sell it and then go under another name or transfer it to another, you know what I mean? Like
Another LLC.
another LLC, like the situation where we have going on at Patricia Drive right now. It's on the market and it's gonna be bought by an LLC.
Yeah,
Well,
the thing on Patricia Drive, they're not eligible to be a short-term rental because they don't, unless they do some other thing where somebody's sleeping in the house overnight, they're not eligible for it. So, I mean, there's always a workaround for every single thing, but the town's gonna know who, that it's been violated, and I mean, is somebody gonna go through the whole process and go through and sell? Like, I
Is
think
it
we-
just easier for us to say in the law, like I had stated before, that they should not be allowed end of story on private roads or in developments?
I agree.
Yep.
I agree. No
I
neighborhoods.
just don't understand
what do
why
you
we
g-
No
would
dead
put
ends.
kids in that position.
So let me ask you, how do you define a neighborhood? Because, and this is what I'm asking, is because we had lots of complaints about people being on top of each other and causing issues to the neighbors, right? Like, that was the general theme of the conversation we heard from the public. So are you guys saying that you want to put short-term rentals in the most populated, most densely populated areas of the town, which is just going to exasperate all the issues that we heard about, and you're not going to allow it in the potential? If I have a 30-acre property out in Salt Point, and I have a little house on there, or I have a cottage that I built and it's an ADU, and I want to short-term rent that, is that really bothering anybody?
No, but that's not a development.
Well,
A development
that's what I'm
is
saying. How are you
like-
defining a neighborhood?
Well, a development is Patricia Drive.
Right, with
Let's
multiple
let's
houses
call a
next to
spade
each
a
Salt
other.
spade.
Point, you
A
got that 30
development
acres.
is up on Ryan's Court.
Or a shared
Ryan's Drive,
driveway.
Or, you
Shared.
know.
So how are you defining that? When you want to write it in the law, how are you defining a neighborhood?
I don't know, but I'm sure we could figure out some kind of
Certain
language.
acreage.
We did consider earlier in the process, allowing them only in certain zoning districts. And
Correct.
that was never defined. If that's what you want to do, we can do that, then we have to go back and do another public
I
hearing and all that.
would
So
like that
it's-
better.
it's up to
The
what
other thing
board
I was
wants to
just
do.
curious, we've been talking about it, I know, and it's been going on, like you said, for over a year and stuff. But is the ZBA and the planning board on board exactly with what we want?
No, so the planning board, the theme of that from some of the members was they didn't like the fact that we're regulating private property, was some of the comments, which I would disagree with the fact that the planning board regulates the use of property, like that's what they typically do. But yeah, they were against, I'm not sure really what the theme was of why they were against it, but they were against short-term regulation. And it was a lot of themes of, we shouldn't be telling people what they can do with the, you know, and that's a really high-level comments of it, but.
Is there a way just to have the three boards just sit down to go over it and just get this done? So it's, like you said, it's taking so long, just get it.
I think, honestly, is that this has been going on for over 2 years. We started with, like what some people have said, where it was located in certain zoning districts. The board changed it and changed the direction of where it went. And then we went in a different direction, which was hosted versus unhosted. Then there was meetings with the zoning administrator, the attorneys, Councilman Deegan, myself. We sat down, we came up with a packet that we sent to the entire town board. The town board didn't really have much comments on it, but then there was more comments that came from public hearings, which then ended up with this one, because the idea was that we didn't want what was happening to some of these properties where you had unhosted businesses operating without somebody there to regulate it. So that's how we ended up on the hosted, and if it's unhosted, you pretty much aren't allowed in any of these neighborhoods except for here in the hamlets and those areas. So that's how we got to this version, was because it stops a lot of the issues that we've been hearing from. And it does kind of what you guys are saying, which is short-term rentals that are businesses would be in business commercial areas. And unless they live there while it's being hosted, they're not allowed in neighborhoods anymore. So some of the ones we're thinking of aren't allowed to be short-term rentals. So then we got to this one. We've been talking about this one. This one's been on our desk for about 3 months. We've had multiple meetings about it. And I'm perfectly fine with whatever you guys want to make as changes. But really at some point somebody else has to take the lead on this and put the time and energy into doing this, because we've been talking about it for way too long, and we're going back to where we were a year and a half ago. And I don't think it's fair to, first of all, we can't regulate any of these things because we don't have laws, but it's been
That means it's not supposed to exist.
well, that's,
Right?
okay, so then we shouldn't be even having any of these issues, but we do. So I don't think it's fair that we just continuously keep going down this road. So I'm fine, and I will support whatever you guys want to do, but somebody else has to put the time and energy in to make the fixes, and we actually have to like pick something and do it, because we're just going around in circles, like I said last meeting.
It sounds like from the comments here that we have, we're very close to consensus, but I'd like to hear some level of commitment that we can come back in a month and be done with this and do this thing. The meeting that Councilman Reifenberg talked about that I sat with, that was zoning and the lawyers, when we were the decision to go with hosted versus unhosted, there were select zoning areas that everybody was in agreement that, okay, we're not going to allow them in those areas. Is this board now saying that you will keep the hosted, unhosted conversation in, and we're going to talk about, and we're going to add re-add those zoning areas that we had before, and then if that's the case, we have agreement?
If I recall, not to interrupt you, but what I recall was that there were certain areas where the board only wanted to have small controlled short-term rentals, not that they wouldn't allow them at all. And that's really what we've come down to here is like Councilman Reifenberg said, the ones that are a house that's purely used as a short-term rental would only be allowed in the business districts, like a hotel, and the ones where people live on the site and are renting part of their home up to 4 bedrooms, but typically it's going to be less than that. Those would be allowed in the neighborhoods and other areas. So I kind of think that's really where we have come out.
Yeah, the intent was to, we heard from families, we heard from a couple, we heard from some other people where they took a barn and they converted a loft area, and they've been doing short-term rentals to offset their costs to live in this town. We're talking about housing crisis and rents and cost of everything going up. I mean, the intent was we wanted to come up with some kind of law that allowed a family like that to continue doing what they're doing, which if you guys only want it in the hamlets, those people are not going to be able to do what they're doing right now, and they're not affecting anybody, they're not bothering anybody, and they're just doing it to help offset the cost to live here. And also at the same time understanding the concerns that people have brought to the board over the years about what's going on some of these properties, and we've gotten rid of that through this law. Those will not be a thing with the law we have. That's kind of what we were trying to do, and that's what came out of those meetings, is how do you regulate some of this stuff without hurting the innocent people that are not running a real business. They're just trying to have people, who want to visit our area and shop here and do things, stay in their loft, and they're on the property 24 hours a day, and they're just doing it to help offset their income. So that's how we landed with this, because it really restricts a lot of the problems that people are having, but it still allows it if you're doing the right thing. And I'm fine going back to the other thing, but again, that's where we were, and we were given direction to go a completely different way. So I'm fine with that as well, but something needs to happen in the next month, because we can't just keep bouncing back and forth.
Who likes the zoning, setting it in certain zones?
I think it should be in certain zones.
I think so.
There should be some kind of acreage verbiage involved. For instance, on Patricia Drive, the houses are. What? Yeah.
Your mic on?
Oh, yeah.
Her little light
Her
doesn't
light
work.
doesn't
My
work.
light's on. My light's on. If the houses are so close to each other, it's not fair to your neighbors. And then anybody with a shared driveway, not okay. If the houses are too close to each other, it should not be allowed at all. Anybody with a shared driveway, not allowed. It's not fair.
I'm in violent agreement. That's what we had on the prior version.
Not
That's
allowed.
what we had, so.
Yeah, that's what we had months and months and months ago that we could have voted on, and
All right, so
So-
how do we move forward with doing this?
Well, we can make a new draft and do another public hearing and another circulation to the county and all that. That sounds like what you're asking for? I'm happy to do that.
Okay, so could we make this public hearing for next month?
no, because
we-
you guys haven't come up with a draft law to
Right,
actually
we
put
need
out
a
to the
draft.
public, so You
Yeah,
guys have
but-
to sit down and come up with some law that we all agree upon to put out to a public hearing. That's what I'm saying, is we had a draft law a year ago. We're starting all over.
So what you're saying is this was really close to the same thing that we're asking for.
You guys
so
are at-
shouldn't-
yeah.
Shouldn't we be able to piecemeal it very easily
You
then?
would think, but nobody could come to agreement on any
Okay,
of those
so
either,
if we don't do the certain zone thing, we can put some kind of verbiage in there about developments and about private driveways.
Setbacks and stuff like that then? Driveways.
If we don't use the word zoning,
Zoning.
No, well, sure, we can do whatever we want, but we have to figure out what it is, so I'm gonna need instructions.
yeah,
on
but what I'm saying is that it would be easier if we used verbiage that we could move forward with without having to go into another public
No,
hearing,
it
but
No,
still get our.
no, we can't, so we closed the public hearing, so we can only really make very minor changes at this point unless we reopen a hearing. So if we're gonna make substantial changes, we need to reopen the
What if they
hearing.
called out the specific street? Is that legal?
What?
Are you allowed to call out specifically, they are not allowed on
I-
Johnson Road?
I think you'd have a hard time having a good justification for that.
And also, I don't think that would be fair to the residents that we somehow decide that, Patricia Drive, there's nobody allowed but Forest Valley, there is, or Traver Road, there's houses on top of each other. It just doesn't, is that fair? At the end of the day, not everybody's gonna be happy with this, right? Because you're gonna have people that don't want short-term rentals at all, and you're gonna have people that don't want short-term rentals regulated at all.
The only problem is if we don't nip this in the butt now, I'm gonna tell you right now, nobody else gonna do it.
Well, we're not
I
nipping.
haven't
There's no
seen
nipping
this-
if we don't have a law.
Yeah, we don't have a law, so we're not nipping
What
anything.
I'm saying is that if we don't change what we need to now, it's not gonna be done in the future.
So you guys
So
need to
it's gonna
work.
be stuck with something that there are a lot of people still very hesitant about with the way this is worded.
So you
That-
guys
To
need.
me, listen, I'm only one person, but that's what I'm afraid
Can
of.
I break it down a little bit more? I just want to throw a couple things out there.
Sure.
So I want to make clear that the large, the homes that are being used purely as short-term rentals would not be allowed under this law because they are not in hamlet districts. The couple that we've been talking about, that people have mentioned at the hearings, they're not in hamlet districts. They would only be allowed to continue at up to 4 bedrooms, and if someone who is an owner of the home is there overnight sleeping on the property. So, that would change under the version we have right now. I just want to make sure that's clear. The thing about the private roads, we've had that discussion. If you want to change it so that they're not allowed at all on shared driveways or private roads, we can do that. What the law says right now is that someone applying for a short-term rental who lives on a shared driveway or private road would need to prove that they have legal access for a short-term rental on their property. So that's what it says right now. If you want to change it so we just don't have them on those roads, we could do that. That would be a pretty simple change, but that would mean that anyone.
I think we had that one.
Well, let me just finish.
Yep.
That would mean that anyone who lives on such a road could be just vetoed from their use of their property for a short-term rental by any one of their other owners on that road. And that was why we didn't say that, but you could make that change.
Without a public hearing,
Without a public
Without a
hearing.
is what you're saying.
Yeah, I think that would be a minor change.
Check that,
Yeah, can we do
put
that?
that on,
If everybody else is in agreement with that.
so we can get this passed.
That's one minor thing we can get rid of without having a public hearing.
All right.
Okay, so we would change,
So just to be clear,
yeah,
short-term rentals are not allowed on shared driveways anymore.
And we don't need a
Is
public.
that correct?
Correct.
Correct.
Second.
all right, we'd have to just add add something that says except not on shared driveways. Oh, I'm on the ADU. Okay. And hey, don't get me wrong, I'm happy to work on this as long as you all want me to. But, but it's just, you know, it's gone, all the while we don't have a law, we're having trouble regulating these.
There's nothing
so,
to nip if you don't have a law.
yeah.
Can't enforce if it's not on the books.
So can this be done by the next meeting?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, so if those are the only changes you want, so we're changing it to not on private driveways, or on shared driveways or private roads. And that's the only change. Yeah, I can change that for the next meeting and we can vote then if you'd like. We do have to do the environmental review, which I put in a draft environmental assessment form in the packet, and
We gotta do that no
So-
matter what, right?
yeah.
Yeah, that's what I
Yeah.
thought.
Now,
Okay.
the other thing is, once this is approved, then they would have to go through the paperwork of getting it, or they wouldn't be allowed to have
Correct,
short-term rental.
yes.
Okay.
Like the supervisor said, I think it's a 90-day grace period
Correct.
for them
Yeah.
to do
No,
that.
Pretty
exactly,
sure
but I'm
that-
just saying, once
thought that's what I
this,
read.
once we approve it here in a month, then it would be, everybody would have to start from scratch and go through the paperwork.
Yeah, and also we did put in the law that, because there can be a problem of proof, but we put in the law that advertising a short-term rental is presumptive proof that that's what you're doing. So
Correct.
you just bring the Airbnb listing into the
Yep.
court, yeah. So as far as the environmental review, I don't want to make you go through all of it, but did everyone have a chance to look over the categories? It's impact on land, geological features, groundwater, flooding, air, plants and animals, agricultural resources, aesthetic resources, archaeological resources, open space, critical environmental areas, transportation, energy, noise, odor, and light, human health, consistency with community plans, and consistency with community character. And the question is whether the board sees any potential significant adverse impact from this law on any of those environmental resources. So if
Sounds
you
great.
do not, then you can,
Well-
Hope for the
That's
best.
a mouthful, that thing.
yeah,
I read through
know.
it, I'm like,
I know, it's a lot, but, I mean, it's
felt
really
like
just.
I needed the engineer to do it.
Well, it's just a form for you to think through. Are there any adverse environmental impacts that would arise from, significant adverse environmental impacts
I don't think so.
from, right, because this is,
Right?
right, it's up to the board, so it's not my decision. Yeah,
There wouldn't be any. Okay,
okay.
Going once.
okay.
So the ADU law, is that up next?
Okay.
Can I
You
start
can
really
s-
quick?
You can
So I
start
just
if
want
you
to say thank you to everybody who spoke on the ADU law. I get it here. Wrong one. So I just want to go over, yeah, I think the board needs, so Emily actually reached out when we were putting this together about the max capacity to three, at 2. I didn't know what the answer was, so I figured I'd wait till today. So we moved it up to 2 bedrooms. Did we want to adjust from no more than 2 persons to something else? And I don't know if we talked about 3, but if we did, does everybody want it to be 3?
I think we talked about, like, mother, father.
Like a parent.
Yeah, parents and
parents with
Child.
2 children.
Can you
So-
say 2 adults and a child, or 1
Right,
adult
2
and 2
adults.
children? Like, can you
Right.
break up the thing like
Then we're
that?
getting,
Or is
I
that
mean-
discrimination?
Yeah, that's gonna be hard.
So 3 people.
so is everybody good with 3 people?
3 people.
Yeah.
Because we can adjust that probably without
Yeah,
a public hearing?
3 people.
Yeah.
And then you're going to look at the B5, the principal building or
Yeah.
primary building or whatever. And then that's all I had.
I had a couple. So I watched the planning board meeting last week. It must have been a slow night. I encourage anybody to watch that one. It was a really healthy debate. I think they all did a good job of being respectful to each other, but raising really strong points. There was just a couple questions that they had flagged. ADUs are not allowed in front yards. I just want to get confirmation on that, right? They're not allowed in any areas based on the current zoning. They can't put something where it's
Put
not allowed
something
right
in
now,
front.
right?
Right, any addition would have to comply with the
That's-
zoning, right?
That's what I thought. For
Yeah.
some reason, that came up in the planning board meeting, that we could put them in the front yard, and it's like, definitely not.
No, I checked that, there's 2 different places where it says that they have to comply with the setbacks and bulk requirements.
Okay, they had raised another point that I thought was fair, was they said it was a little bit too vague when we say that the ADU needs to reflect the existing structure, I think aesthetically. They said it was a little bit vague. It's like, what does that mean? They said like color, so I think that was valid. Yeah, those were the only 2 I had.
So do you have a suggestion for changing that language?
That would have been smart.
Right now, it says the design of any detached ADU must be compatible with the primary single-family dwelling on the lot. We could just take that out if you think it's too vague, or,
Well, they wanted it more specific, like compatible how? Like, I mean,
How to define compatible?
To look like.
compatible and similar look. I mean, I'm not the one
Right.
who wanted doing this. You should see how my house looks.
Matchy-matchy, like that could be,
It was one
Taken
comment. If
anyway.
nobody else has a strong feeling, but that was just one that flagged. They weren't pushing back. They just had a question, and I didn't have a good answer. Maybe we leave it.
Make it look the same.
Scratch it. Nobody gets that 30 seconds back.
we can always change these things as time goes on if we find that they're not working right.
Okay, so I have to write stuff down because I'm not very good at this. So, this legislation, while well-intentioned, directly conflicts with the original intent and the framework of our town zoning code, particularly the preservation of single-family residential neighborhoods. By permitting accessory dwelling units, we would in effect be allowing the introduction of multifamily housing into every heart of areas currently zoned for single-family use. This shift could fundamentally alter the look, feel, and livability of Pleasant Valley's established neighborhoods. We must also carefully consider the long-term consequences that may follow. The addition of ADUs could open the door to investor interest in absentee landlords converting a single-family home into multi-rental unit properties, potentially diminishing neighborhood stability and the quality of life for residents. What may begin as a modest second unit on a residential property could eventually lead to an influx of unregulated or loosely monitored multifamily uses in areas never designed to support them. Furthermore, our current code enforcement team is already stretched beyond being stretched thin. Their responsibilities are essential in ensuring that our existing buildings, homes, properties remain safe in compliance with the town's regulations. Adding enforcement of new ADU provisions could place an unsustainable burden on the team of the 3.5, to support such oversight. Without proper enforcement, we risk creating more problems than we solve. I do understand the need for creative housing solutions, which I would like to talk to a couple of people that spoke tonight about that. but it can't come at the expense of of the values that Pleasant Valley has built upon. Our zoning code reflects a deliberate and thoughtful vision for our town's growth and stability. But I believe that any changes to that vision should be approached with extreme caution, broad community input, and the resources to manage them effectively. Bottom line, I'm not real for this.
Just to comment, though, on the one thing about, I just want to make sure that everybody understands there's only one ADU permitted per single-family dwelling, and also owner occupancy is required. So the owner either has to live in the ADU or in the single-family house. So there's not going to be a bunch of investors buying up property because they're not going to be living. You can't do it. So I understand your concern, though, and it's I understand.
Is that it, everybody? Okay. Oops, sorry.
For the environmental review, it's the same questions I read off before. So are there any concerns that ADUs would cause a significant adverse environmental impact? Okay, so that'll be in the resolution for you to do a negative declaration.
Mrs. Supervisor?
Oh, yes.
I'm going to take one for the team over here. Is there any way we can do a recess for 5 minutes? Because we've been in this for over 2 hours, and we have
Sure.
more lengthy discussions. Can we use a bathroom break?
Absolutely.
So I make a motion that we go into recess for 5 minutes?
All in favor?
Aye.
Now's the time for everybody to sneak out the
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, moving on with our discussions to Camp No Teaming. Councilman Chapman,
So,
Councilwoman Chapman.
wow. Okay. Um, I just have some concerns. Unfortunately, I wasn't here last meeting. I had to be up in a conference up in Albany. I feel like we might have blown a huge opportunity for our town. Anybody that knows about Camp No Teaming knows that it's a very large piece of property and it would be a huge undertaking. But I feel that by not utilizing it is going to be even worse for us. We don't know what's going to happen to it. We don't know who will buy it. We don't know the potential of who will take it over if the county decides to sell it. I have concerns. I was very, very disappointed and sad to hear that we had decided to not do what we were planning on doing with it. I understand the time frame, but I absolutely think we can pull it off. If we all work together, which we have been, there's no reason why we cannot get this done. And that place has so much potential for all of our recreation. When I came here, my goal was community and recreation. And I was so disappointed to hear that everybody wasn't on the same page as I am. And yes, it's going to cost a little extra money. And yes, we're going to need some more employees. But we have a county backing us that is willing to help us and willing to do what it takes to help us. I don't understand what went wrong. I don't understand. And I'm so disappointed to hear that we didn't go forward with this. Everybody seemed very gung-ho about it. And again, I understand the timeline and the time frame. What happened? What happened? Why did we lose that? And how do we get it back on the table?
Go ahead.
I'm very disappointed.
Well, I mean, I know one of my concerns was just making sure we had enough employees in that, but I've talked to, Sue Serino directly on Friday, because she was out to Arlington High School for our trades fair that we're doing again next year, and she literally promised me if there's a problem with any, getting anybody lifeguards, you name it, she will be there to, give us 110% support and state, we can get, whatever we need, because they really want to work with Town of Pleasant Valley to be able to use it. And then I also asked about the fire company being able to do drills up there nights and stuff like that when the kids aren't there, and she says that's not a problem. So.
There has to be a way to make this work. We cannot lose an opportunity like this for our town, for our kids, for our seniors, for everybody in our town. We lost that originally. I cannot lose it again. We lost it to Pathfinder, and now we have the opportunity to take it back. I don't want it to happen again. I was so disappointed after my conference when I watched the meeting that we lost it. There has to be a way to get it. There has to be.
So I was 100% for it, and
as I felt we all were.
Yes, but things can change. I mean, we started, so there was multiple things, right? Is that we started talking about this a month and a half, 2 months ago, and we had multiple meetings, and as it went along, things weren't happening that we would discuss at the previous meeting. Like, that's not, we can't deny that, right? It's like we set out to do something to have it for the next meeting, and it didn't happen. And what that did is that ended up kicking the can down the road a little bit on everything. It started off with it costing the town, let's say $10,000-$15,000 to go and do camp there. Then the next number we saw was $30,000 to do camp there. Then the number on a resolution tonight to do camp there is $85,000, while cutting investments in soccer, not doing pickleball, and some other things that are in here. I'll be honest with you, is that between the timeline and things not coming through, and tightening everything up, at the last meeting, a decision needed to be made. Either we had to go and jump into this at Camp New Teaming without a contract that we actually have. I still don't see a contract tonight for a resolution. We didn't have, I don't have a contract attached to anything. And the public doesn't have one. We didn't have the funding. We didn't have an actual resolution to actually move money around to actually cover the costs of going to Camp New Teaming. There was a whole bunch of things that at the last meeting, when we had to make a decision of what to do, we didn't have the proper materials in front of us to make the decision to go, yeah, we're going to Camp New Teaming. Was I upset with myself that we couldn't do that? Absolutely. But my job is to make a decision based on what I have. And unfortunately, we didn't have the stuff to make it happen at the last meeting. So we could have waited, and we talked about waiting, but the rec director and the rec department, who actually has to execute all this stuff, said they needed a decision. And unfortunately, we had to make a decision at the last meeting. And I'd just like to ask, I think it's a great idea that we have I mean, I'm going to be honest with everybody. We have a resolution on here tonight to make an $85,000 budget modification to hire some camp staff. You would have thought in the last 2 weeks that the board would have some communication of how this actually came about. You know how much communication we have? Nothing. You guys probably know more information about this than me or any of the other town board members here. Have you guys talked to the rec director and talked to her about your guys' plan? I don't think you have. I had to call the rec director to find out because nobody's answering my phone calls. So as much as it's easy to sit here and say, I'm upset about this, I'm upset about this. But this wasn't my choice. I was ready to roll up my sleeves and make this happen. And for whatever reason, outside of my control, it didn't happen, and we weren't prepared when we were supposed to be prepared. And it's easy to sit here and put a resolution together and whatever. There's been zero communication of why this resolution's even on here, what the plan is, what's changed over the last 2 weeks. If somebody can answer that, that would be great, because as far as I know, nothing's changed. We're sitting in the same boat we were 2 weeks ago, but nobody knows anything. I would love for this to work, but nobody said a single word about this. Do you know plans that we don't know?
No.
I'll tell you one thing I do know is that it's not 90,000 for just the summer camp for the Camp No Teaming. That is, you have to, the 84,000 is, you have to minus 29,688, which is on the thing that I had originally given everybody. And that's the amount that we actually need for Camp No Teaming. The thing is that we might as well move the money that we're going to need, because there's going to be a shortfall for the camp, whether it's at Camp No Teaming or not. And then the other thing is that we don't have to hire a lot of people. There were only 5 people that weren't on Camp Sunny Days list that were on Camp No Teaming's list. So there's like a 5-person deficit right now, which shouldn't be an issue.
So I don't see advertising for an aquatics director or lifeguards. Is the plan to spend all this money and not use the pool?
No, we have been told, I have been told and you have been told by Sue Serino, they have ads in for aquatics.
Yeah, but
and
we
for
have to
that.
hire them. So why are they
Yes.
advertising? I don't see
No, they're advertising for themselves, and they have a whole lot of them. They said they can get it done for us.
We don't have that.
Guys, we don't
We don't
have
have that.
anything
Why have
to
they not sent it to
advertise
us
or
to
to
see?
hire aquatics directors or lifeguards. We also, do you realize that we put out a public resolution tonight with 5 people's names that were given a notice last week saying that we didn't want them as a town, and now you guys put a resolution together with their names on it publicly? Did anybody decide to actually call them and ask them if they still wanted a job? Like, I get it. I would love to do this, but it seems like we're cutting a lot of steps out, and we're trying to, like I've been concerned of since the start, is we're trying to make something happen, and it's not gonna happen correctly, and it's not gonna be good for the residents or the kids. I don't know how you like, we're trying to make something happen here that's just, can we admit that this is not,
I still don't understand the lifeguard and the question from the county executive. I'm glad that she told you she's gonna give 110%. What does that mean? What does that mean? Like, what guarantees
She
do we
wanted
have?
to make sure that she could help us make this happen for the kids.
She wanted to make sure Pleasant Valley residents and kids were able to use it. Like she said, the worst
And
thing is
people
to
in
sit there and
general.
not be able to use it, and she wanted to make sure the town, and I was like, well, and I told her, I was like, the reason I said no is because I assumed, and you know what happens when you assume, I already assumed we locked down the people. We were planning, no matter what, since last year, you were gonna have it up at Helen Eldridge Park. So you should already had those people locked up for employment. So that should have been done, and it wasn't. To find out that 2 weeks ago that we didn't even hire those people, that's scary when we're talking shortages of people everywhere, okay, for work. So when that came across, then I was worried even to one in case we couldn't get those, and then
Same.
we'd have to cut down our camp, right?
So was I.
So then she stayed, I was like, and then looked through and noticed it was only 5 different people that we would have to hire. And I said, that was another issue. How do we go because of the lifeguards? Because we had multiple people get up there and talk about the lifeguards. There is a shortage in that. She goes, I will guarantee you, if you need anything for lifeguards or whoever, we will get those people for you so you can run the camp. And that was my biggest concern. I'm like, I'm not gonna put on, I've just been on here myself for 5 months. I'm not gonna have egg on my face. I stated, you know, literally, it's gotta work for the town. And that was the other thing. I was like, we also said it was just for the camp. I was like, what about people being able to use it? Like we talked that night about using it during the night, you know, being able to walk the park or, you know, go up there, or the fire department. That's not a problem. She literally told me that, and that was on Friday.
so the problem is that all of the discussion should have happened 2 months ago, and it didn't, and we had to make a decision. As far as I know, we've already booked trips for Camp Sunny Day from Helen Aldridge, because we gave direction to the rec director 2 weeks ago that the majority of this board didn't want to pursue.
No, the
Camp
trips were
Routinely.
gonna happen no matter what.
Yeah,
Well, that's
and the
even
trips could
sillier
still
then.
happen, no?
That's even sillier. We're gonna spend all this money to then send everybody to a bunch of places 15 out of the 30 days?
No, that's only for mainly for the older kids. Not at this time. I'd like to just take care of this. Thank you.
So I want to know, you guys want to do this, what is your plan? Like, if you have a plan that you guys have worked on and I just wasn't aware of it, I would like to know it, because I'll be supportive of it, but
Listen, I'm coming to this and I went to Mary at the end of last week and said, because it's been sitting on me and it's been weighing, there has to be a way.
so what's the way?
I don't know the way, Michael. I don't know the way.
I don't
but
think
there
we're that
has
far
to
from
be a
being
way.
able to make it happen.
I just
really don't.
feel like this is such a huge opportunity for us. And I see social media and I see all the comments and the snarky remarks, but at the end of the day, we need to do what's best for our community, and we need to do what's best for our kids, our grandchildren, our adults, our seniors, and we're passing up an opportunity to make something huge for us. And I don't know the way. And I will say I don't know the way, and I will be the first one to say I don't know the answer. But
if
I don't feel we should give up so easily.
But if we
could
don't get up
spend
there,
months and months and months and months on STRs and ADUs and ABCs and all these other things.
I think that's the problem. These discussions started back in the fall, and the town board wasn't brought into it until 2 months ago. I think I agree. We have to spend months and months and months on simple things like that. Like, I don't know how we think that it's May 19th, how we think that we're all of a sudden going to pull this off 2 weeks later than we were last time, and we didn't think that we'd be able to pull this off without zero communication or a plan. Like, I would love to hope and dream that this is going to happen. We have zero plans. And in the MOU, or the stuff that the intent from the county that we were all sent, there was no guarantee that after the summer we had any option to take over the park. They didn't guarantee that in any of the stuff that they sent us. They actually
Well-
said, the county actually said, no, we're not gonna send this group of people to your camp. We're gonna kick you out mid-August, and we're gonna have them come in and use the camp afterwards.
Well, that wasn't really what they wanted to do, but after our
But-
first discussion, that's what ended up happening, because they realized that we weren't gonna take on a lot of the extra kids, other than what they required of us to do, which was with the Pathway to Promise. So that's the reason that happened. That was not on the county. But because it is now, they need us out by the 8th, which I completely understand. So
what's-
they're
what-
willing to do it from June 1st, and we can let people go up and walk up there.
Wait a
and-
second, wait a second. What do you mean by that?
What do you mean?
They're allowing non-camping people that have nothing to do with the camp, go and use it for free?
Yeah, but during the day of the camp, during the times of the camp, which is the end of June through July till the end of the first week or so of August, it has to be locked down from the time of the camp in the morning until the afternoon when the kids get late pickup.
So is that in
And
the?
then people can go on then, and they can go on the weekends. Now, from June 1st until the end of June, people can go up and walk and take hikes and stuff like that.
So is there
It's
anything?
not a place for animals, though. Let's not.
Is there anything in
let's
the
make sure.
MOU that says that? Because the last time I looked at the MOU, it didn't say any of that.
Wait, do we have an MOU?
We
I don't know.
have what
We
they
don't have
sent
one.
me, but Warren has it, because he wasn't able to get done with it. But
Well,
this is the,
Understand what's in there.
but they told me that they would tweak anything that they would want us to tweak,
So let me ask you, why doesn't the town board have this?
because I just got it and I had to give it to Warren, because Warren was gonna look at it for me. He just had so much going on, he wasn't able to finish this today.
So while some are scanning, I got a couple comments. Personally, I'm not against new teaming. I'm all for it. I was for it for next year. The concern I had is that we were running out of time. And, you know, the bird in hand has always been Camp Sunny Days at Helen Aldrich, and at the last meeting, it was starting to feel scary that if we didn't act, we were gonna lose that, and that would have been a disaster. I agree with Councilman Reifenberg. Unless they've said something in this MOU that gives us a guarantee, doing this camp hasn't guaranteed us anything, unless they've actually put something in there that says they're not gonna do X, Y, or Z.
What do you mean X, Y, Z?
The concern about they're gonna sell it, or they're gonna do that, like, the fact
Well,
that
they
we're
didn't
thinking
put that,
we're
they're
gonna
not
do a
gonna
camp and
put
it's gonna
that in
prevent
there
them
for
from
us,
selling
for our
it.
agreement, but they're sure as heck not gonna do it if we're gonna be going up there and trying to do things. This is like a stepping stone. This is what I explained in the beginning. This is a stepping stone for us to do more at Camp No Teaming. This is not the end-all of agreements. This is just for us to do from June 1st until August, I think, 7th.
So let me be clear.
Great.
So if someone on a Saturday wants to go up there and go for a hike in the trails, who lives in Pleasant Valley, they're allowed to go up there for free.
Yes.
Does it say it in this agreement?
No, she told me she would put it in there. We just spoke to her about it.
And that's for the time period of the camp? Like,
For the camp.
I know they can't go either during the hours of the
Right.
camp,
The
but if,
camp, the
As long
gate
as
will
the
be
little kids
down
aren't there.
during the hours for the camp to make sure nobody goes in there.
okay, are they allowed to be in, like, who's is there security or anything? Is there any issues with that? Or like, are they allowed to literally just walk through there on a Saturday or 5 o'clock on a?
There is no security.
But they're
They-
allowed to go there and walk in. So Pleasant Valley residents can use new teaming for free.
Yes. You're not gonna go in the pool, but yes.
You can walk and
So-
use the fields.
That's another
can use
issue
it.
I have with this. So when we're talking about this, let's just be clear, we're all aware of this, but new teaming, this is serious, right? You have canoes, you have lakes, you have aquatics, you need lifeguards. This isn't like putting kids in a camp with a gate and then just let them go and they're gonna be safe. So what assurance do we have that we're gonna have everything we need from them on that? Because that's, you know, you're talking about risks of drowning and things like that, right? So how do we know that they're gonna, when they say they're
Well-
gonna do 100%, like, what does that mean? Are they guaranteeing
Well,
they're gonna get us the lifeguards?
first of all, anything to do with the boating, the canoeing, the rowboat, the swimming, is up to us to make sure that the aquatics people that we hire, the lifeguards we hire are, they know what they're doing.
And if
that
they
they
don't,
have
is
the
the county
background
saying
and they
they're
have
gonna
the
provide the
training.
people?
Pardon?
Like, what does that mean? If we don't hire people that are up to snuff, does the county provide the people? Like, what does that support actually mean?
The county is willing to help us find lifeguards and an aquatic director if we can't find one.
And we don't have them yet because we haven't started that process yet, right? Okay.
Right.
So the last flag I have, and then I'll shut up.
And, go ahead.
So I just want to, I don't know where we're going right now, but if we go this route, I just want to make it very clear that in a month, we don't forget about what happened, and we put all of the responsibility on that individual's head.
Well,
Hold on, I'm not done. I want to make sure that doesn't happen, because that has a way of happening. I've seen this in other areas, right? Not in our town necessarily, but I want to make sure that if we're going down this path, we as a board are united to make sure that this works successfully, and we don't say, oh, it didn't work, and it's somebody's fault who's running this, that she has all the support she needs to have this as a success. Because we're 2 weeks ago, it did not feel super confident that we were ready to go, and now if we're thinking we are, okay, I'm all for this if we can do this well, and we're gonna work together as hard as we can.
I felt confident 2 weeks ago.
But there's 6 people involved in this. It's 6 people involved in this decision. This is not all on the recreation director.
Now, one thing I'm just
No, because
wondering is,
there's-
last year, when it was run up there, who ran it up there last year?
The woman that's gonna be running the camp.
The
to
one we're
begin with.
hiring.
Yes, Susan.
So the one that ran it up there last year,
For the past 2 years.
for the past 2 years,
Yes,
we have her locked in that she'll be running it
yes.
again.
Technically, right now, she's hired
So-
to run
right.
Right,
Camp Sunny Days.
Camp
Right.
Sunny
At
Days, but
Helen Aldrich.
she's run it up there before, that's what I'm saying. So
She
then,
was the
like
former-
Dan's saying,
Yes.
making sure that it's just not on Nikki's, then she would be
Right.
the one who's
Would
run
not
it
be
before
just on
then,
Nikki's
correct?
shoulders, right.
I'd like to ask if this is going to be open after camp hours, which has never happened there before. What's the plan for supervision of the camp overall with, you have boats, you have pools, we're saying that's all going to be closed, but if we're not paying anybody to be on site to oversee all of that, how are we guaranteeing that nobody's taking a boat out and drowning in the lake or jumping in the pool and doing whatever? I mean, to think that we're not paying people to go up there and watch that, did we take that into account with anything?
Well,
Where's the part about that any Pleasant Valley resident can go there for free?
It's not in
It's
here.
not in there.
It's
We were
not
gonna get
in
it
there
written in
yet.
there.
We're gonna put that in, she is willing to put that in there.
Okey dokey.
So there's currently a lake up there right now, correct?
Right.
The pool obviously is probably empty, I'm assuming?
No, one of the pools is empty. The other pool is gonna be used by the kids during
So-
camp.
What's to say right now anybody wouldn't drown right now?
Because it's not allowed. The camp's closed.
Dogs are also are not allowed at Bauer, but we have the guy
No,
running
what-
rampant with his dog.
It's completely opposite. If we
So-
open it up to town residents and say, you can go up here and use this 200 and something acre park, and somebody goes and they slip into the lake, and
Whose liability?
well, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, we're saying we're opening this up to the town. It's a little different than I go and trespass right now and fall in the lake. So we really have to think through all of these things, like just saying, oh, we're going to let people run around and do whatever they want. That's never happened up there before. Even when the Boy Scouts had it, nobody just ran around. So, I mean, I get the county can say whatever they want. It's not in here. And do we actually have a plan to do any of that? And still, I would still argue that 30 days of camp, with no guarantee in here that they're actually going to let us take over the camp afterwards, for $80-something thousand, if you do the math on that per day, we could send every single kid to Six Flags every single day for the amount of money we're paying to do this, and we don't even have a plan for an aquatics director or lifeguards. And I know the county's saying they're willing to help it, but last time I checked, we need to advertise and do all of that stuff in-house.
My logic for the Pleasant Valley people being able to go there for free is that we need to sell this to the public, that everybody in Pleasant Valley is spending $100,000, but only 80 families get to benefit.
Yeah, and to Dan's point, which I didn't mention before, I made it very clear at the last meeting, I am not against Camp New Teaming. I'm 100% behind this next year. I think it would make more sense to go through the budget process and hear from the residents. If they want us to spend $250,000, $300,000 to maintain the park and set up a revenue and expenses and hire our own staff and do that, I think that makes more sense than trying to try to throw something together last minute and try to make this work. It just doesn't make sense to me. I just feel like we're trying to make something happen, and we're not admitting to ourselves that, like, it's going to be okay. We could.
When does the rec director get to speak? She spoke at the last meeting.
Yeah, I would love to hear from the rec
Why
director.
can't are we allowed to
Then go ahead.
recognize?
I just wanted to get our own thoughts
Yeah, I
out
got you.
first.
All right.
Thank you. First, I'd like to say that I'm 100% for new teaming. I've been for new teaming since the fall. There's so much that goes into camp, so much. And in all honesty, there's a complete disconnect between the rec office and the supervisor's office right now. And it's not working out. If there's no communication between us, then we're not gonna be able to get this done. Because I, as the rec director who runs camp, knew nothing about this until I saw it on the agenda on Friday. This comes down to being on the rec department and the camp staff, meaning myself, and it's just camp management. Myself, Susan, yes, she'll be very helpful, of course, because she worked there for the last 2 years, so she knows what to do. Joelle, the assistant director, and the health director. The three of us prep for camp. Susan and Joelle have full-time jobs. So, for instance, we have a meeting on Thursday from 4 to 6 is the only time we've been able to get together in the last 2 weeks to try to plan camp. I'm not against this, but this is going to be very difficult to pull together in 5 weeks. You don't have a resolution to advertise for lifeguards and an aquatics director, which means that can't be put on until June 2nd.
We don't have to have that.
But wouldn't that be something that we should have all talked about in the last 2 weeks?
We just spoke to Sue Serino about this, literally, like 2 days ago.
Okay.
So,
So
no.
what does that do? Does that
but
take a
what-
big load off of your plate of the whole
What?
aquatic scenario? The county is committing to do something on this?
Including
If the
the,
county can commit to the lifeguards and the aquatics director, then absolutely, yes. But there needs to be more communication with the recreation department, because in the past 2 weeks, I have literally booked tents for Helen Aldrich Park. Once you guys gave me the go-ahead to do Helen Aldrich, tents are booked, there's quotes coming in, the trips were finalized, and now I have to go back and cancel trips. You have a resolution here for staff that I told 2 weeks ago were not being hired. So how are we hiring these people?
so if they're not available, she will help us do that also. And we
I
don't have to put an
understand
ad in for
But
that.
why can't this be a discussion that we are having
Because we
daily?
just found out
And I
about
called you
that.
3 times over the weekend to discuss this.
Excuse
So
me,
I'm
my
not-
weekends are mine, I'm sorry.
I understand.
Thank you.
But if I'm expected to work over the weekend when I have activities and events going on, and a resolution is put on Facebook at 4 p.m. on Friday for something that extremely affects the rec department as the only full-time employee in the rec department, I think that I have quite a bit of say in this, because this all comes down to me. Nobody here knows the camp book that I have to abide by through Dutchess County. It's like 150 pages of rules and regulations. Like, I don't want to sound negative, like I don't want this to happen, but I need this to be a cohesive board, a great relationship between the rec department and the board, so that we can all work together to do this. I can't be surprised by these things, because now everything I worked on in the past 2 weeks, I have to go back and fix if you guys vote for this. It's a waste of time, it's a waste of taxpayers' money for me to keep working on the same things over and over and over again.
How many things does that actually include?
Teen Camp has 4 trips a week. I have a meeting with Wilcox, with the county on Wednesday of this week to finalize the Wilcox trips. Why would we go to Wilcox if we're at New Teaming? This was all decided, that this is what I'm spending my time on, for what?
Okay, but have they been paid?
I'm not talking about being paid, I'm talking about the time that
No,
has
I
been
know
spent
that,
on
I know
this.
that, I'm just asking.
Wilcox
I'm
is,
just
I'm
asking.
working on a deal with Wilcox for our teen campers to go there every week.
Okay.
I think
so
I was
But
just
they
looking.
wouldn't go there if we're at New Teaming. So these are things that are being worked on, and I'm sorry if I sound frustrated, but I am.
I think I was just looking for big picture, which you were able to kind of shed light in
Yeah,
that. So
I want this to work, I do, but we all need to work together. We all need to answer each other's phone calls, we need to answer emails, we need to make sure that everybody's on the same page. I need to know what's going on in the rec department, because you guys keep talking about, oh, the zoning department has so much on their plate. Oh, this department has so much on their plate. The rec department has so much on their plate. I've had my hours increased over the last month. I've had a PV day given to me, and now Camp New Teaming. And if Camp New Teaming also moves on into the future, then we're gonna have to work out a new deal with them in the future as well.
So
So the
what-
recreation department is overwhelmed.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but so what would, let's assume we could press an easy button, which is hard. But let's say everything that we were having here that wasn't working well starts working. What do you need as the rec director in 5 weeks to make this a success?
A 100% communication with
Besides that,
whoever's going to be.
assuming that's
We need
an
a
easy
products
fix.
director, we need lifeguards. I need to find out from these people if they're still available to work, the ones that are being hired tonight, because I told them that they weren't being hired.
Okay, what
And,
else?
I need supplies, I need to cancel trips, I just have to revamp camp. Everything that we've planned in the last few months has to be changed. And that's fine, if we all work together.
What's to say, I mean, this may be naive, but what's to say we couldn't find a separate person just for no teaming?
No, well, I did ask, and Supervisor Albrecht and I did speak about having
Like a
Vanessa become
completely
full-time if
rec-
this was something.
Not a rec director, but like a camp no teaming director, just
We have
for.
a camp director,
And I-
yeah.
Susan,
Yeah.
I thought that's
Right,
what Dan.
so.
But there's a lot of prep work that goes into this. Susan is the camp director for the 6 weeks of camp, and she helps prep by doing interviews and helping with some paperwork. I do all of the legwork. I do the inspections. I set up all the paperwork. I submit everything to the county. We don't have a camp permit still. And now I submitted the paper for the camp permit, and I have to resubmit it again if we do this, which is fine.
How quickly could you, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but how quickly could you and I'm sorry, her name is Susan?
Susan.
Yeah.
How quickly could you two get us a document of the top 10 things you need to have done in a week to make sure this
Oh,
is
I could
successful?
talk to Susan tomorrow. Listen, Susan and I are for this. Susan wanted this so badly. I want this so badly. I do. I just need the communication. I just need to know what's going on so that we're not wasting time booking trips or doing things that I don't need to be working on if we're going to be moving forward with new teaming. Totally fine.
So this is the blocking and tackling that I'm talking about. We can sit up here as a board and say we want to do this and we got to find a way. This is the way. So if we need to have a playbook of how this actually works to make sure it's successful. We have 5 weeks. I think we can do it.
And then then just get what Susan needs to have for us to make it a success, like you just said. So we can
We
go
can't be
forward.
speaking in highfalutin language. We need to have specifics of what
Right,
needs to
she
be done
needs
by
to-
when.
So we can
Well,
get it done.
essentially what needs to happen is tomorrow we all just need, or whoever's going to be on this, I mean, obviously Supervisor Albrecht and whoever else is working on this, there just needs to be full transparency. I need to know what's going on every single day so that I can
Got it.
plan
Got it.
for it.
Okay, so let's just do this tomorrow morning. If everybody thinks that we should do this, then we will start discussions about certain things.
Can I ask the attorney a question?
Sure.
Mr. Veeder brought this up. The resolution that's on tonight is entering an MOU with Dutchess County to use Camp New Teaming. I mean, we just received this tonight. It wasn't advertised. It's not, the resolution says it's attached. It didn't go out to the public to even make a comment on. What are your feelings? I don't know if there's anything legally that it has to be or what, but
We only need to publish things that we have available to publish. So if we don't have it, then, you can add things at the dais. My biggest concern is I haven't had a chance to read it, so I couldn't tell you.
Because I happened to talk to him on Friday, so he got it Saturday.
But
That's-
did he review it?
Yeah, he was reviewing it. He asked for the Word document of it today,
Okay.
during the day.
I can't speak to that then. I didn't know that.
I just don't like the idea that we're going to potentially consider doing this, and we haven't given the public any opportunity to even speak on it, because we haven't put any of this stuff out in the public, any of it. I don't even think the public saw the bullets from the county from the last time.
What's changed in 2 weeks besides the fact that we're going to find a way and we got to do this?
Nothing.
There were also some comments, I remember when we talked about this before, comments about some of the details that I don't know, if we've been able to work out, like how the 50 extra kids work and those types of details.
Well, Sue and her office take care of that, and it's up to 50. It's not necessarily 50 kids.
Okay, I know
It's,
there
but
were
it
some.
is- but I'm sorry, but that's how it's working. That's the pathway to promise thing that the county started.
Okay, that's fine. I just personally have not had a chance to look at this, so I can't speak to it.
I also, I mean, the resolution authorizes this agreement. I mean, it's great, and I'm thankful that the county executive is making those promises, but we have nothing, I mean, none of it's in here. If you guys are going to do this, I'm still going to be against this, and that's fine. I'm fine being in the minority on this. But if you guys are going to do this, to Councilman Deegan's point, is you guys have to support doing it. We can't sit here 2 weeks later and go, oh, I don't have a plan. That's not an excuse anymore. Either put the work in and make it happen, or this is what happens.
You have the votes.
Yeah, you have the votes to make this happen.
Votes,
So
at least
do
three
it,
votes. Vote and get it done if you want to do it.
but you have to put the work in. We can't just complain about things and not put the work in to make it happen, because this is where we find ourselves.
Not everything has to be unanimous.
Okay, update on the new town hall?
So this is a boring one. I don't have any cool pictures or anything. So if you've driven by, the roofing, that's been done for a while, but the siding on both ends is complete below the roof line. The second floor is almost completely sheetrocked. We passed an electrical inspection this morning. There's a resolution to purchase the court benches, if you remember. We took those out of the contract for the bidding, so we didn't have to pay the markup on them. So we did all the process to send out an RFP to different companies to save the markup, which is going to be significant. They're going to start sheetrocking on the first floor, and that's all I have, unless anybody has any questions.
I do.
Go for it. I don't know if I'll be able to answer.
The only question, well, not questions, is just since I had my meeting earlier with the beautification committee there, is there a way to have someone mow our new location?
Yeah, it's already been talked about.
Okay.
There's a conversation going on of whose responsibility it is.
I figured that's who
No.
it was, who's supposed to mow it. So it's
Yeah,
not
so-
ours yet, but
Yeah, so we that conversation started late last week. We're trying to figure out the logistics of who mows what, because I would send our people up there to just do it, but it isn't a construction site, and in one of their contracts might say that they have to maintain it. So it will be done either way, hopefully here this week.
okay. And then the other thing was the sign out front. Is that we were gonna originally? I remember move the one and swap the sign, electronic signs and stuff.
That's being worked on.
Okay.
Yeah, that's outside of my stuff, but I know Phil has been working with a sign company to have them put together a quote to bring before the board. But
Okay. Is that gonna be a digital one?
I believe that's what they were looking at.
Okay.
I think the supervisor's been working more on that.
Okay.
I believe, I don't want to speak for you. but
No.
You haven't?
No,
All right.
I sent,
Alright.
I'll
I
find
sent
out
her
about
Okay,
down
that's
to
just,
the
they were
new
asking
town
just
hall.
to try to start getting all the signs to somewhat between the parks and the different town properties, whatever sign we kind of go with to keep the same, look. So that's why I was just curious if we had.
Yeah, it's the
it
same
was gonna
person
be.
who
I can
installed
put
the,
you in touch with her.
Okay,
it's the same person who installed the firehouse sign, so.
okay,
Right. Oh, yeah, that's right. It is, yeah.
thank you.
Okay, on to our resolutions. I'd like a motion for Resolution 513 of 2025, authorizing the purchase and installation of courtroom benches for the new town hall.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And then I have to let them know that tomorrow morning, just so you know. I guess they have to have it by a certain date, otherwise we get charged more. And I'd like a motion for Resolution 514 of 2025, amending the 2025 general fund budget.
So moved.
Second.
I
question.
just, yeah,
Oh.
go ahead. I
Maybe
was
you're
going to explain some of them.
I just noticed the numbers didn't match. Are they not supposed to?
What's that, son?
I would have thought that the increase and the decrease numbers should match, right? And they
Oh, I see
don't.
what you're saying, the 63.
Yeah, the amount you're taking
No,
out
it
of fund
should
balance
be.
doesn't equal the
It
increases.
doesn't equal
So you might want to take that one back and then have them redo it, because the numbers don't, the increase and decrease aren't equal.
Yeah, that doesn't match.
40, 50. Huh, okay.
I get my municipal gold star for the week.
Yeah, really.
'Cause I
I'm
can do math.
Really impressed.
Do
Okay.
we want to table this and have you double check
Yes,
the
please.
increases?
It's like
Yeah.
6,000.
So.
I'll make a motion to table resolution 514 of 2025.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion for resolution 515 of 2025, authorizing payment of abstract 5 of 2025.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I need to make a motion to change the amounts per game, right? It's not supposed to say 30, it's supposed to say 55 for each one of them, correct? Yes. All right. So I need a motion for that.
I'll make a motion.
Do I have a second? Okay.
Second.
All in favor? And then I'll make a motion for 516 of 2025, appointment of Town of Pleasant Valley basketball referees.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I need a motion for 324 of 2025 to form the beautification committee.
So moved.
We made it, oh, sorry.
You just need a
Who's
second.
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 We made a change to this because we took Nikki off and Todd off because it's just too much. It's just too much for both of them.
Can I just ask, though,
Yes.
and it's more probably a legal question. So the whole intent behind that was not that they had to be at every meeting.
Right.
The intent was is that if the committee called on one of them to ask them to come to a meeting, that we as a board approve them to use hours to go and participate in the meeting. So if we
okay.
remove this, are we not allowing them to then, like, let's take Todd, for example.
So they don't
That
have to be
wouldn't matter, right?
mandated.
Well,
or
I
not
just-
mandated, but
so, like,
time, just
y-
whenever.
Yeah, like Todd could go for an hour if they asked him to be there, and he could deduct an hour from working at town hall kind of thing. That was kind of the intent, but
I don't remember what the wording was before. I think
It
it
was
would
just-
work either way. I mean, I don't think the previous way required them to be there.
no. So the previous way said the town board shall also designate a town board member to serve as a liaison to the committee, and the town rec director and appropriate groundskeeper or public works staff shall be included in committee meetings.
Yes, so
They
that's
should
why
not be
we
voting
do that.
members.
Yeah,
So
I don't know
think
if included, I think by included we meant invited, not required to be there, but
like a resource.
yeah, it's up
Okay,
to
so do
how
you want
want it
to
to be.
reword it?
Well, I just want to make sure we're not shooting ourselves in the foot that, like, we're going to be 4 months down the road and then they want these guys, to come.
We wouldn't be, they could still ask them for stuff, right? And have them
I
go
think
to a
it's
meeting?
fine either way,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. You all right with that?
I don't care either way.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
I need a motion for 518 of 2025, amending the adult basketball leagues rates.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I need a motion for 519 of 2025, authorizing execution of undertaking for work affecting state highways.
So moved.
Second.
Can we just discuss this for a sec?
Sure.
So I'm not going to get into specifics on this, but I know it has something to do with the new town hall, where we need to replace stuff that's in the right-of-way of the state, right? And this, go ahead.
I think it's for anything though, right?
Yeah.
It's
for
actually,
Yeah.
it's actually broader than that. I mean, this is kind of, the new town hall's kind of brought this up into effect, that we should have an undertaking with with New York State DOT. And it's a 20-year contract with them that we can cancel anytime. And it just gives us the right to work in their right of way, anywhere in town, not just at the town hall. And it relieves the state from responsibility if if one of our staff gets hurt working in their right of way, basically, it takes the responsibility off of them, and it's on the town's insurance if, God forbid somebody gets hurt or something goes wrong, or, God forbid we do a project wrong, which we don't. Thankfully, we're pretty good at what we do. But it just means that the state's, absolved of any responsibility, basically, on any road work we do in that right of way.
You explained it much better.
You're welcome.
Yes.
Thank you.
Human terms.
All in favor?
Aye.
Resolution 520 of 2025, a resolution to adopt proposed local law H of 2025, a local law amending the town code of the town of Pleasant Valley by enacting a new chapter 72 entitled Residential Rentals, which implements good cause eviction.
So moved.
Second, I have a couple questions or comments.
Okay.
Is that okay now? Is that seconded? Okay. So I was going to speak before, but I think now is the point where I'm supposed to before we vote. So for starters, this public hearing on good cause eviction, thank you for the words. Thank you for this is what it's all about. The way people came and spoke, they were respectful. They weren't angry. They made good points. And they realized that nobody's here trying to hurt anybody. And I really appreciate that. To the people that have stayed, that have weathered the storm, I appreciate it. It's a good reminder of why I think we're all sitting up here, and it's a good reminder, having this many people sit here, this is how this is supposed to work. There were a couple points. I did hear about reports and things like that, and I'll look into that. I'm not familiar with those, but what I do know on the human level is that what doesn't show up on that report is the impact on children when they get evicted. What doesn't show up on that report that's trying to talk about evictions, there's things that happen, there's damage that's done before an eviction actually occurs. There was someone who lived here, he had 3 kids, he had to move to Hyde Park because his rent was $750. That's not on any report. Every single town and municipality that passed this, they passed it at the 1 cap, the small landlord cap at 1. And the reason for that is because that's the best way to help the most amount of people possible. There are LLC loopholes. It doesn't necessarily mean that people are bad actors, but there are ways around that, and this is the best way to cast the net the widest. Just a reminder, and I'm not going to be long here, a couple minutes. The presentation I made when I first brought this up to the town, and I have to say, I really appreciate how I've been treated through this process by this board and by the public. But just a reminder, if we're talking about statistics, there was that acronym called GRAPI, gross rent as a percentage of household income. 30 to 34% are considered rent burdened in this community. That's where they spend more than 50% of their income on housing. I'm sorry, that's where they spend 30% more of their income on housing. 80 units in Pleasant Valley. 405 units are considered severely rent burdened. That's where they spend more than 50% of their income on housing. And the last thing I want to just mention is sometimes the way these things, well, there's really 2 things. Everybody here who's run for office, they've knocked doors. I've knocked on a lot of doors. I've knocked on a lot of doors in the apartments. The human element to this is something you don't forget, you don't unsee it. There are people that came here and spoke, and some could say, I haven't heard anybody say this, but some could say, well, if it's such a big deal, why aren't all these people sitting here? Why aren't they making this point known? It's because they're terrified to. And my job sitting in this seat is to speak for the people that are too afraid to come speak. That's the whole point of this. Those are the people, frankly, that I ran for, and there's a reason they don't come here. I've asked them to come, they won't. They're afraid, they're not going to. So my job is to speak for them. When you see black mold, when you see termites, when you see roaches, and they literally won't file the complaints because they're so afraid of being retaliated against, that's why good cause eviction should exist. There were complexes brought up tonight that I have been to, and frankly, they're good ones. I haven't heard complaints in those. People are treated fair. This isn't saying that every landlord is bad, but this is definitely saying that I have personally met people that are suffering and they're too afraid to come here to advocate for themselves. Final point. On Saturday, the Republican committee had a fundraiser, and they also recognized the food pantry in Pleasant Valley. Every chance I get to talk about the food pantry, I do, because they are the shining star of this town. Whenever you want to see Pleasant Valley at its best, go to the food pantry. If you can't go, send the money. If you can go and send the money, do both. They are the best. If you want to be reinvigorated in what a human being can be for other human beings, go to the Pleasant Valley food pantry. So they were recognized. Steve Gessner and the whole staff there, they are there every single week, rain or shine, on holidays, they're there serving people. And they just got an award for it. We've recognized them in this room. Past boards, future boards might as well. We're recognizing them because we recognize the need that they're serving and the people that they're helping. Everyone knows that food insecurity and housing insecurity go hand in hand. The people that we are serving at the food pantry are the same people that we're protecting with good cause eviction. So if we give awards and we give plaques and we give proclamations, but we're not actually willing to pass a law that protects the same people, I think the certificate that we're giving isn't worth the paper that it's written on. So with that said, I appreciate the respect. Thank you for letting me babble. And I really hope that we vote for this thing.
Okay.
Are you discussing?
Yes.
Okay, I just
Oh,
want to
no,
make
no,
sure
go
you weren't
ahead.
going to a vote. No, go ahead.
No, go. As you know, I cannot speak very well without having something written down. My age affects me now, so. At its core, this legislation would impose sweeping regulations that dictate how private property owners must manage their relationships with tenants, placing restrictions on their ability to make decisions about their own properties. I firmly believe that local governments should not interfere with the free market in this way. Property owners, many of whom are Pleasant Valley residents themselves, should retain the right to manage their investments responsibly without undue government control. The passage of this legislation, especially if coupled with the accessory dwelling unit law, could drastically change the character and function of our town. These two laws working in tandem threaten to erode Pleasant Valley's long-standing single-family zoning protections. They open the door to multifamily housings. It's just this whole law about good cause eviction. There was a gentleman here earlier that got up and spoke about, I'm going off script, this is bad. That spoke specifically about the fact that there have not been evictions in our courts all the way back to 2023. So obviously the problems that are going on in other towns or other places, other counties, I can understand maybe they're happening, but they're not happening here. So this is just, I just wanted to state that. I'm sorry. Thank you.
So I just want to talk about a couple of things. There was a question, this wasn't at this meeting, but the last one, somebody had brought up, and it's come up tonight about other laws, having the proper staffing in the planning and zoning office. So the way and maybe Councilman Deegan can correct me, but the way I read this is there's no enforcement from the town. Basically, a tenant would have to go and take their landlord to court, basically, because this would be.
Yeah,
Is
Mr.
that
Veter
correct?
asked that. If he was here, I would have addressed him. It's a good question. He was concerned that this was going to be a burden on zoning. It has no impact on zoning. This is a thing that's going to affect three people: the tenant, the landlord, and maybe a judge if they can't come to an agreement.
Okay. And I just want to make sure I understand this correctly too. There was an issue brought up, I don't know if it really came up directly tonight, but rent increases, like being capped at whatever it is, there's a percentage. If somebody invests in a kitchen or a water heater or a new roof or something like that, this does not cap them. They can recoup that cost by increasing the rent, correct? There just has to be a conversation, and it basically forces landlords and tenants to discuss that.
I don't know if it's a conversation so much. It's a burden of proof. So if the rent increase is over that percentage, then the landlord would have to justify to the judge why they made the higher increase based on an investment.
And
for
that's
instance.
only if the tenant took them to court? So if I was a landlord and I invested in something and I was going to increase it by 20% to cover that, I could go to the tenant and say, listen, I know it's going above the X percentage, but this is the reason why, and I could justify it. You don't have to go to court to figure that all out to raise it that much. You could raise it and then the tenant would have to take you to court to prove it. Is that how it works?
Yeah, I think a lot of times it comes up when the tenant is being evicted and this is the defense, so I'm not sure who takes who to court, but essentially, yeah.
Okay.
The number is roughly 8.5% that they're allowed to raise it every year, plus if they have justifiable increases. We had talked about it a meeting ago of if someone replaced the boiler.
But we don't have to go to court to raise it 20% if I can prove to myself, unless the tenant takes me to court.
Right.
Okay. Just talking about the zero evictions, I think that actually maybe kind of supports the idea here is that people in Pleasant Valley aren't getting evicted. So I think to Councilman Deegan's point is we have to look at the people that he's talking about where they're scared to, like, I'm going to get really personal here about my story really quick. Grew up, my mom was a single mother. I was the kid at school that got free lunch. That's how I got fed at lunchtime. Came from basically nothing. Me and my two sisters and my mom lived in the attic up on Salt Point. Thankfully, my mom had that agreement with my grandparents and we didn't have to rent. But I think of somebody like my mom who basically couldn't afford to even take care of us. And being in a situation, and it's kind of happened to me when I rented on 44 here when I was out of college, is that how I see this is that if I'm renting somewhere and I have a lease, or my mother had a lease with us, and something like COVID happened where everything inflated really super quick and the market kind of got crazy, there's really nothing stopping somebody right now after a year lease saying, you know what, I'm not going to renew your lease, and I'm not going to renew your lease because I'm going to go from $1,500 to $2,500 when I get the next person in here. I don't know, I think that's kind of wrong. And I think it's kind of takes advantage of people, and I get that it's a business. I'm not saying the people that spoke tonight do that. That's not, but there are people that do that, and I kind of experienced that when I rented. I just think that we should be looking out for everybody. I think the landlords. Most of them are great people that do great stuff. I think most tenants are great people that do great stuff. I think the fact that we have zero evictions in the town of Pleasant Valley probably means that we have a town filled with great people that don't need to be evicted and do what they're supposed to. And just one other point to clarify, if somebody's not paying their rent or somebody is destroying the place or they're not following the lease, the way I understand it is they can still go through the eviction process that's currently in place. There's nothing stopping them from evicting that bad tenant. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Nothing's changing with that. All this is stopping is that situation where somebody just wants to get rid of somebody to get the next renter who potentially is, they can raise the rent. Is that kind of what this is doing?
Correct, and it's also excluding the landlords that own and live on property with 10 units or under. This is they're completely exempt from this.
Okay, that's all I had. I had to just clarify some of that. Thanks.
With that said, though, I know different people that rent, and somebody in Hyde Park tried to evict somebody who was selling drugs, and it was only a 3-unit place, and this was without this law, and it took them 2 years to get that person out, to going to court. I don't think adding any more government on top helps for somebody. They didn't even have this law, and it took the guy 2 years. He ended up losing the place. Okay, it's just not right. Okay, I just don't think government should be stepping in when, you know, it's so hard to get somebody out, and then the people to the left and right ended up leaving also. So he was stuck with 3 units because the guy was selling crack. It's all documented, and the judge said, it's just the process, and then you have to set up another date, and then another date, and then another date. It went on for 2 years.
Did he live on site?
What's that?
Did he live on the
Did
property?
he live on site? He was next, not adjoining properties.
Was it part of the units, though? Was it like
What's
a...
that? He
was it
wasn't
like
part of the units. He lived next to it.
Got it.
You know, so he got to see literally his investment go down in front of him. So, I mean, that's where I'm worried about. I mean, like we said, we have great tenants and we have great landlords, and then I just don't think the government should be stepping in stating, you know, more things on top of it. We're having enough problems just doing ADUs right now and, you know, Airbnbs. And that's what, you know, well-educated people hear.
All right. So I'm gonna be the devil's advocate here, because I'm having a really hard time here. I obviously care about my community. I care about the renters, but I also care about the landlords. I live in a low-income community, and I would never want to see anybody lose their home. But at the same time, I also had a friend who ended up losing her home that she rented out, that she worked extremely hard for, and had to sign the house over to the bank because her tenant decided to stop paying their rent. And it was years and years and years of her trying to evict this person for not paying rent. And she ended up losing her childhood home that she worked so hard to keep. So I see it from both aspects. And I know that I'm going to end up being probably the deciding factor here. And either way, I'm going to be the hated one. But I have a real problem with my neighbor. If I have a neighbor and I'm living in an apartment building who is a crackhead, and I have children in my apartment, and they can't be evicted, and their lease is up, and they now have to be offered another lease, I'm looking at it from that way. And I'm sorry, but we're a town of 9,000 residents. And some of these laws coming from Albany have no right to be here. We're a small town. That's big town government, and we're small town. I have a real problem with some of this. And yes, we need to protect our community and we need to protect our residents. But at the same time, we also have small landlords who are just working just to keep afloat for their other house that we don't know why they have that. And it may not be a company. It could just be somebody like me or somebody sitting in the audience who has a second home that's renting it out. And now they have no way to get rid of somebody who is literally just destroying their home. Either way, it's not fair. And do I want to see people's rents raised? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Like I said, I live in a low-income neighborhood, so I see it from both sides.
Can I just give you something to think about? And I'm not trying to convince you one way or the other, but the eviction process, I think we all can agree in New York State is absolutely horrible. And it shouldn't take 2 years to get rid of anybody that's
taking longer.
That's breaking the lease and selling drugs or whatever they're doing, right? Like that I think everybody in this room can agree that there's a problem with the state. But I think the way I understand this from reading it is we're not going to fix that problem. Even if you pass this law, that's not going to change. So if somebody's doing drugs or breaking the lease or they're destroying the place, you're still, even if we pass this, you're still going to have that avenue, and it's still going to take 2 years or whatever it is until Albany decides to change it. This is just covering for those situations where somebody wants to not renew a lease. It could be you and the most pleasant family ever, but they decide that they could get an extra $1,000 if they renew with somebody else and not you. The way I understand this is that's what this is preventing. But the whole eviction process, it's still going to be a lengthy, horrible process. That's just New York State at this point. And yeah, we should be advocating to the state to change that. But I might be wrong. I might be completely wrong. But the way I've read the law is that that's still going to be the process. And unfortunately, it's going to stay the same. This is covering because you're still allowed to evict people for those things, even passing this law.
Yeah,
And if somebody could show me somewhere in the law where it says different, that'd be great. But
So I appreciate the thought you're putting into this, Jen. I know it's not easy, but the examples you laid out there, they would all be exempt from this. The small landlord, that's the person that has put their life savings into another apartment to rent out, they're considered a small landlord, they're exempt. The person that has someone that's trashing their apartment, they can still evict them. That's a different situation, how long it takes to evict somebody. It has nothing to do with this. This isn't helping or hurting that issue. The person who you said they're doing drugs and they're breaking the law, same issue. This doesn't help or hurt that. I did hear somebody make the point, and I've already spoken, but I heard the argument made by somebody that when you are going to make a decision that makes someone homeless, you should have to go through a bit of a process that has a judge sign off on it before you make a family homeless.
Can we do a roll call?
Yes, can you do roll call, please?
Okay. Councilwoman Chapman.
Oh, it's terrible.
We were have suspense.
I can't do it. Nay. I can't, I'm
Councilman
sorry.
Cookingham. Councilman Deegan.
Aye.
Councilman Reifenberg.
Aye.
Supervisor Albrecht.
Nay.
Motion fails.
Okay, I'd like a motion for 5/21 of 2025, appointing the Planning Board Chair. Anybody? No, I mean a motion first. So, yeah.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Thank you.
Ken, I just have a question. Is
Sure.
this, I just want to make sure did we talk to the lawyers to make sure we can retroactively appoint somebody and pay them back when they weren't holding the title?
That person has been acting since the
Yeah,
beginning of the year,
yeah.
so.
Okay,
yeah.
that's all I had. Thanks.
Do you want roll call?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Against? Okay. I need a resolution for 5/22 through 2025, authorizing a memorandum of understanding with Dutchess County to use Camp Noaming for the town's 2025 summer camp and approving associated budget modifications.
Can I just ask you, would you mind reading the whole resolution, please, for the record?
Sure. Like I didn't read enough tonight? Sure.
Just wanna make-
Whereas the town of Pleasant Valley has an opportunity to use Camp Noaming facility owned by Dutchess County to operate the town's 2025 summer camp. Whereas the Dutchess County has provided a memorandum of understanding defining the town and county's responsibilities, including in relevant part, the town's use of Camp Noaming facility for its summer camp in exchange for offering free camp admission for certain campers designated by the county. Whereas although the town does not have to pay for the use of the camp facilities, the necessary changes to the camp program, such as additional staff, require modifications to the town's 2025 budget. And whereas by Resolution 214 of 2013, excuse me, the town board assigned funds from its unappropriated fund balance to various anticipated uses, and the town board has determined that the funds assigned to playground equipment are no longer needed for that purpose and should be used to fund the additional camp expenses. Now therefore be it resolved that the town board of the town of Pleasant Valley authorizes the town supervisor to execute a memorandum of understanding with Dutchess County and substantially the form attached, are subject to review by the attorney to the town, and be it further resolved that the town board approves the following changes to the 2025 budget. Increase A7140.100, $90,000 for summer camp. Increase A7140-400, $1,500 additional insurance. Increase A.174.40.415, $6,150 additional supplies. Decrease A7140.404, $5,350, food will be included with new camp. Decrease A7140.100, $1,600 pickleball instructor not needed. Decrease A7140.454, $5,000 soccer has budget funds not needed. The additional funds being budgeted to move to summer camp from Helen Aldrich to Camp Noaming to come from assigned unappropriated fund balance A.0915 in the amount of $85,700. Do you want to do a roll call on this, Mary Beth?
You need a motion and a
Oh,
second.
yeah, motion, please.
I'll make a motion.
Does somebody want a second?
Sure, second.
I would just want a quick discussion before we do a roll call. I just want to remind the board, I would ask for you to vote against this resolution for two reasons, well, three reasons. One, for all the stuff that we talked about before. Two, in the resolution that you're about to vote on, it says the MOU attached. So I know that the county has given you a bunch of verbal stuff, but the MOU that's attached doesn't have anything in writing guaranteeing that the town's going to have access to anything outside of the town summer camp hours. It doesn't have anything in it that says anything about aquatics directors, lifeguards, anything about the pool. But it does say that we're required to run the pool. So if the county tomorrow decides not to help us with that, we're still on the hook, and it's part of our contract to run that. The third thing is I don't think it's right that anybody would vote on a resolution that has spending $100,000 and an agreement that wasn't public before you guys vote on it. So I would hope that you guys would, for those three reasons, vote against this tonight. And if you have to, schedule a special town board meeting where you would give the public a chance to actually speak about the details of this. Because I don't think it's right the way it's being done right now. That's all I have.
Roll call?
Yeah,
Agreed.
please.
Okay. Councilwoman Chapman? She's always the first.
I need to change my last name.
Is there a way just to have them get back to us with that
So,
information?
just a point of order.
Then that,
Just
oh,
a point
sorry.
of order, the discussion's already by. The vote's already been called, so she has to vote.
Thanks. Aye.
Aye, okay. Councilman Cookingham?
I thought that's what we were doing tomorrow, getting all that stuff, so I mean. Aye.
Councilman Deegan?
No.
Councilman Reifenberg?
No?
Supervisor Albrecht?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, I'd like a motion for 5/23 of 2025, appointment of 2025 Town of Pleasant Valley Summer Camp No Teaming staff.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Just a discussion. For the same reason that I stated before, I think that the town board should vote against this resolution for the fact that the town's already sent letters to these 5 people stating that they weren't going to be employed, and they haven't been talked to since the last 2 weeks to make sure that they even are interested in being employed. And I think it's inappropriate for the town to be hiring 5 people where we haven't discussed that employment with them. So I hope you would vote against this for tonight. And if you have to schedule a special town board meeting, I think it would be more appropriate to do that. That's all I have. And I'd like a roll call on this as well.
Councilwoman Chapman?
Nay.
Councilman Cookingham?
Nay.
Councilman Deegan?
Nay.
Councilman Reifenberg?
No.
Supervisor Albrecht?
Aye.
Motion fails.
Okay, I'd like a motion for Resolution 524 of 2025, resolution authorizing a contract with Young Explosives Corporation for fireworks at Pleasant Valley Day 2025.
So moved?
Second, can I just get a discussion?
Sure.
I know we, Councilman Reifenberg, no, not you. Cookingham and I have done interviews, and our goal was to have everybody emailed and let everybody know about the committee. but unfortunately, one slipped through the cracks, so we do have to schedule one more interview. But we will be doing that this week, and we will hopefully, possibly, if we could, do a special town board meeting to get the committee together. So I just wanted to put that out there so that, you know, we'll pass the fireworks, but it'll end up being left in the committee's lap.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, a motion for 524 of 2000, wait a minute,
525.
it's the same thing. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Okay, I'd like a motion for 525 of 2025, a resolution authorizing the supervisor to execute an intermunicipal cooperation agreement between the town of Pleasant Valley and the Pleasant Valley Fire District relative to the Pleasant Valley Pump Station at 1624 Main Street, Pleasant Valley, New York.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Against? Okay. Okay, there are no items for special consideration. I'd like to make a motion to open up the public comment portion of the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Just a few notes for you all about new teaming. We can't get the permit until we have the actual staff, so I have to fill out forms that basically state what the staff are, who the staff are. They won't approve us. We just took new teaming and didn't hire the staff.
Well,
so
I will work with you on that
that's
tomorrow.
fine. The soccer budget was just depleted because we actually had an unexpected expense last week that used to come out of facility, used to come out of field supplies, and I was told needed to come out of soccer. So now the soccer budget is fully depleted. So we're gonna need a budget transfer.
Okay.
And then I beg of you to please, I've asked a few times, please make Vanessa full-time at this point, because I have to transfer this camp over in the next 5 weeks, and I also have to plan PV Day with the committee in the next 3 months, and this is a lot. This was never expected of me before, and my work hours were also increased over the last few weeks. So I am begging, please give me a full-time person. The previous rec director did not have to do all of this. I need help immediately, please, by the next board meeting. Please, please, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. Gully Stanford, 181 Marshall Road, as they say in Monty Python, now for something completely different, though in passing. I would compliment the board for grappling with these, the town council for grappling with these major issues and allowing your constituents, your residents, to hear the pros and cons of these issues. But what I wanted to draw your attention to, the hour is late, but I think in 7.5 hours, the polls open on a local election for school boards. And I just wanted to remind the town council that your partners in local government have an important appointment with destiny tomorrow. We have 3 school districts in our town of Pleasant Valley, and we have students who attend the Millbrook schools and the Arlington schools and the Hyde Park schools, and yet we don't actually have any headquarter offices or indeed any offices. We have a couple of schools from Arlington and one from Hyde Park. But the decisions made tomorrow in the school board and budget elections will affect the quality of life for our young people, for our families, the residential attraction of Pleasant Valley. So while it would not be appropriate to recommend how one would vote in the elections tomorrow, I'm happy to remind everybody here present that these are important elections. Unfortunately, the turnout occasionally leaves much to be desired, but I do hope the electorate understand that these are important elections and we should exercise our civic responsibilities. Thank you.
Chris Dyson once again. Just want to say thank you to all of you and thanks to everybody here who, especially everyone who stayed. I thought tonight was a real affirmation of the town's participation in some really important matters. And I just want to offer, to back up some of the comments I made earlier, that to the extent that we can work collaboratively with the town, the planning board, on kind of mapping out how the future is going to look from a standpoint of creating more supply and more multifamily supply for this town, sign me up. I'm here to help, and I look forward to those discussions. Appreciate y'all.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, Michelle Figueretti again from 7 Patricia Drive. I want to echo the sentiments. Thank you guys so much for all that you're doing. It's really late and we appreciate it. You might not feel it all the time, but appreciate you listening. You know, one thing that came up that I didn't mention before, and we talked a little bit more about it, it might be our ignorance, but when we talked about owner-occupied initially, we assumed that that meant that that would be the person's primary residence. And reading through what the updated language is on the definition of ownership, it just seems to us that quite possibly we're just opening up to any owner where, you know, limited liability company, a person or people holding a partnership or interested. It talks about people owning shares in a corporation, being an owner, considered an owner. So we would like that to be considered. It just, knowing especially what's happening on our street where we're under the assumption that a company is purchasing this house that's being rented out, we really would appreciate kind of some limiting of what that looks like.
Hi, Rebecca O'Halloran Circle. Councilwoman Chapman, I can't agree more. I was here the last meeting and multiple meetings over the past few months about Camp New Teaming, and I can't say enough how devastated I was to know that it wasn't going forward. But clearly, as it seems over the past few months, there's little involvement with especially the rec office. And I can say this, as I work in a camp, I wouldn't want to be in the position right now of trying to figure out where I'm supposed to work. That is just disrespectful to everybody in the situation. And to put it clearly, I hear a lot of we's being thrown around, but is it really we, is all I can say. And to furthermore say, again, working in a camp, the person responsible for putting this camp together is the one that's gonna be there every single day. She was the one there all last year, she was the one running it, and if you're not there and if you are not in the shoes of being in any part of the rec department, for instance, I was here on kids' prom night. It was astounding to see the local involvement of all of these kids and parents. I worked for 9 hours volunteering to help out. The rec department is strapped. I was here for summer hoops. We talked. They need help. They need help. So when she's clearly saying she needs help and she wanted to speak on that, she's the person that's running this camp. And we all have lives on weekends and after hours, but recreation runs a town after hours. That's when it happens. And it seems like if there's no community connect within the town representation for our kids, how are we as parents supposed to know where to put our kids this summer? In this situation right now, I'm trying to figure out where to put my kid in summer camp, and it's gonna make a big difference for me as a parent. Am I gonna take my kids to Camp Sunny Days at Helen Aldrich, or am I gonna have to go to Camp New Teaming, which is a little bit of a different direction from my camp in which I need to go? And multiple other parents have seen this over the weekend, and we talked. They're like, where are we going? We have 6 weeks left. We need to know these answers. And when I say we, town board, our recreation director, and the parents, we need to be involved. Thank you.
Anybody else like to speak?
there. Arun Fricker, 117 Valley View Road. I will say I'm a little disappointed that as a taxpayer that I'm paying for something that I didn't even have a chance to read about in Camp New Teaming. I mean, I understand that this has been something that's been talked about, but I'm just hearing these numbers now, and I would rather have that money spent on the downtown or in other projects that I feel passionate about. And this is my first public hearing, but it doesn't seem like there was preparation involved in putting this together for us to take the public comment on and hear about and actually read what's being voted on. So I just wanted to say that I'm kind of disappointed in this.
Anyone else? Okay. I'd like to adjourn the meeting.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing, public comment.
Oh, sorry. I'm done. I'm going, yeah.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Have a good evening.